And we're live. Hello, everybody out there who may be watching, anybody who may be tuning in later on. Thank you very much for doing so. Welcome to the Erasmus Expeditions. This is session 12 of a campaign that we have been running, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, Egyptian-themed, in my homebrew world of Rostfin, in the kingdom of Baklabesh. This one is called On the Rise. So, before we get too much into our game tonight, I'm going to go ahead and let everybody introduce themselves, say hello, promote things, you know, the usual stuff, and then we'll get started. So let's have Baron. Why don't you take us out?
What's up, everybody? I'm Baron. I'm over at the channel RWD Gaming. Right now, we're primarily tabletop gaming videos played online. Hoping to branch out some. Come check us out. I'll be playing Vaat Samushi. He is a Naga fighter, and his presence has become a bit of importance to the group, given the origins of him. So hopefully we get to get into that a little bit tonight.
Maybe. All right, let's go Eli next.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eli Kurtz. Good to join you again for another game of On the Rise. I do things, but all I really want to promote right now is this little album called Space 1992 Rise of the Chaos Wizards by Gloryhammer. Came out a few years ago, and it's really good. So if you haven't listened to it and you like power metal, shame on you. Fix it immediately. I will be playing Shava of the Shifting Sands, an elven rogue, and I'm very excited to get started.
Excellent. And Trevor.
Sorry, still laughing about Gloryhammer. Good evening, everybody. My name is Trevor. I will be playing a druid named Rith, who recently reached level 5 and will hopefully become a warlock as well tonight. I have nothing to promote other than my well-being. So this is my at-home tale. There we go.
Excellent. And covered almost. Jeff.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Jeff. I have a YouTube channel. It's called Encounterbalance. Check that out if you're interested. I also do a podcast with our my good friend Jeremy here, the GM, called The Dudes of Yore. We will soon be adding another of our friends, Shad Nick, to that project, which I'm very excited about. Out for episode 3, probably coming, I'd say about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks from now, should be. Yeah, I'm playing Khalid. He is a monk rogue. We just recently got a little bit more insight into his life in Messhiba, the capital city, which we just left. So I'm interested to see kind of where everything goes from there.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, we have Mike.
My name is Michael. I am playing Noctos. He is a Mahan dwarf, which is a desert dwarf from Jeremy's homebrew world of Rostfin. He is a war cleric of Yabala, which is the water goddess. And we're kind of following her path to get to the end of the road here. We're to this encounter with the dragon and the sand ships, so I'm not going to hold that any longer than I have to, so I will see you in game.
Excellent. Thank you. And okay, just one or two other points to cover before we kind of get things started here. First of all, this is an adult channel. These are all adults, as far as I have found out on their little forms that they filled out for me. And there's going to be mature topics, and mature language is just kind of a thing that happens here. So if those kinds of things bother you, then exunt. So yeah, do you guys have any other questions or anything before we kind of get started with the recap?
Yes, one question.
Yes.
What world are we in?
What boat are you in?
What world are we in?
What world are you in? Rostfin.
Okay, just checking.
At least you hope. Blah. No. So yeah, if there's no questions, other questions, We'll move on to the recap. So last time, you guys were leaving Messhiba in a hurry, as there were some undead charioteers that were kind of pressing down on you. You managed to mount up on a few horses, along with another stranger, a snake man, Naga, who was also trying to leave town in a hurry. So you rode off with these chariots in pursuit, and a battle ensued, and eventually you made your way safely enough out into the Kurundu Desert, trying to work your way towards the Tombs of Deshara. And you traveled on for a few days, and then were caught in a sandstorm, for which you had to take some shelter. Everybody got to know one another just a little bit better. And you set out over the next couple of days, only to discover kind of a fortuitous, serendipitous sight as you kind of came over the last dune. Down kind of in the sands, the flats, were two ships engaged in combat with one another. Each one of these ships just so happens to have a little bit of a tie to your recent history, one of which was captained by a man by the name of Kaliba. Was a slave ship that you tried to get to take you to the Suknos village, and they kind of helped you load a bunch of treasure onto their ship, and then waved goodbye and left you behind in the middle of the desert. The other ship was, until very recently, captained by your traveling companion and once dear, close, drunk captain, Civis, who has recently been murdered. He and the head of the few slaves that kind of had joined you as part of your crew. And then the ship that he had piloted was stolen. And you guys are fairly certain that it might be a friend of Kaliba's. Well, friend may be a strong word. An assassin named the Ink of Messhiba. So you guys kind of cloaked yourselves in an obscuring vortex of sand and kind of moved closer to where these two crews were fighting one another, when all of a sudden you heard the leathery beat of wings and a shadow passed overhead. And it was none other than Bireshadjet the Glassblower, an ancient blue dragon who lives in the sands to the east of here. But the party has had a couple of run-ins with in the past. So that's about where we're going to be starting, unless you guys can think of anything that I've left out or need to add, clarify. You know?
The other thing that I might add is, along with loading up the treasure into that boat that was waving goodbye to us, they also had her hatchling.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yes, which the party, through actions of their own, managed to return to its mother. And essentially they were granted the boon of their lives in exchange. Okay, cool. You guys think anything else? All right. So, as the iris on the camera lens opens, we're kind of flying over these sandy dunes with nothing in sight except the granules being blown about by the wind. And we hear the clang of steel, the screams of warriors, men and women, fighting for their lives, screams of these same men and women dying. But we don't see anything yet. We just hear this clash. Flesh and bone, steel, bronze, magic. Just as echoes through these dunes as we kind of sail over them. And then the battlefield comes into view. Two sand-sailing ships pulled up alongside one another, as if ocean-going vessels. And people swing back and forth by rope, fight on gangplanks. Very traditional stuff you might expect. The one thing you don't expect is this small, lone sand cloud, kind of kicked up dust devil, slowly winding its way across this dry, flat land, closer and closer to these two ships. And then something passes directly in front of our view, large and blue, scaled and muscled, bedecked in all kinds of gold and jewels. It is Bireshadjet the Glassblower. And as she banks at the edge of this dry land and turns back around, she flies lower and closer to these two ships. There is the sound of thunder just before the clap, the silence, and then the thunderclap itself, and a bolt of lightning shoots forth from her mouth and covers many on the battlefield. This lightning bolt that's probably 4 feet in diameter at its core zaps straight through 4 people before hitting the sand and exploding. Many others are caught in tendrils that shoot off of the main branch, and they jolt violently before falling to the ground, smoldering. There are places in the sand that you can see that now appear blackened and shiny, reflecting the sunlight as if it were a mirror. The 5 of you stand huddled in this vortex of sand. For now, you hope, at least, safely hidden from view. What would you like to do?
Shava is the one who created this sand obscuration, and she's also terrified of dragons. So she's kind of in the middle, holding up her hands and moving the sand along a little bit as they move. And you can see she's visibly shaking as this is going on. She's really uncomfortable. And she's like, I do not know how much longer I can maintain this barrier. We need to find a place to hide.
I think that you might all hear what could be faintly recognized as a laugh from a snake, I guess. I don't know exactly what that would sound like particularly, but I don't think we'll find much for a place to hide in the flatlands around here.
Well, then a way to escape at least.
One of those ships might be nice.
Yes, yes. Let us go right now.
Hang on just 1 second. If we board those ships, chances are we'll get fried just like those guys did.
Shava stops walking. She was walking toward the ship, and then she stops. And I imagine, like, if anybody was out in front, they maybe stepped out of the barrier for a little bit, had to jump back in. And she's like, "What are we to do?"
Elf, you must find your feet. There is nowhere else to go. We must at least get into the shadows of the boat.
Very well, let us. And so she's gonna kind of double her pace toward. Yep.
So this small little cloud swirls its way over towards the closest hull, and as you get there, there's a body that falls over the railing above you and literally just splashes, for lack of a better term, into the sand right in the midst of all of you inside of this vortex. But you have reached the hull.
would someone know the difference between the two ships? Like this one isn't more likely to be targeted than the other?
It's possible. Anybody can roll, I guess, a history. It's kind of a stretch, but history or insight, or if you happen to have the tool proficiency for water vehicles, you could do that. Or I guess
Maybe
technically even land vehicles.
Investigation, maybe?
Now, Rith wants to roll insight.
That's
That
fine.
druidic inspiration.
But one
Yeah,
of
that
them was
works.
part of her horde,
And-
and the other one stole her child. So she kind of one of those things.
And Noctos and Rith, the two of you can have advantage on it.
I got a 23 total. It was a natural 20.
With my advantage, I also got a natural 20 for a 26 on an insight.
Okay, excellent. So the Rith and Noctos, the two of you can instantly realize that this is Civis's ship, or the one that was recently Civis's ship. You can tell that because this was once the bejeweled offering inside of the treasure hoard, where it was set up with kind of the illusionary riverside and things. So this has places where, gold leaf are still kind of clinging to the wood, and, jewels that were in set had been pried loose, things like that. So it's pretty recognizable. Shava, you understand what this boat is, not because you've necessarily seen it before, or that you've ever really, other than just the fact you've heard them tell stories about it. You have heard of this boat, and having been put into the tomb where it was stored as a gift for a pharaoh long ago who was very, very fond of sitting by the riverbanks and watching the boats float up and down.
Nice. Does the boat have a name?
Sure. What's the name?
Oh man. You said it was not built to be put inside this tomb. It used to float pharaohs up and down the river, but then it was put inside a tomb when a pharaoh died.
Yeah, it was placed inside of an illusionary river, inside of his tomb.
Damn, cool. I think I'm going to call it the Dream Bark.
Excellent. Okay. So the three of you realize which ship this is.
I rolled a 17, but I figured they would have a better idea of the ship than I.
You might have an inkling. You could probably tell that this is a funerary ship. A funerary decorated ship, because you've seen plenty of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Khalid, if my memory serves, weren't you one of us that was assembling the bottom of this ship? Not to be disrespectful, but did you put a secret way out that we could potentially go in through?
Well, considering you guys were the ones that picked me up in the desert and the boat was already going,
Damn,
I'm not sure that was me.
you're right. Blast.
Is this the fabled Dream Bark? Stored in the pharaoh's tomb?
Of course. What else did you think it would be? I mean, we're standing here next to it.
This is a good omen. And immediately I'm going to start climbing the side of the ship.
Well, there's plenty of handholds for where the gyms used to be. Why not? So Rith is going to follow.
Would this be athletics or acrobatics?
In this situation, either could apply. If it's athletics, you're probably actually climbing the ship. Acrobatics would probably be a nearby rope or something.
Cool. I think I'd rather find a nearby rope then if there is one. It's an 18 on my roll to get up there.
Okay, and it's as Shava is shimmying. What are the rest of you do?
Cleve will start following as well with the 22.
Noctis is going to wait to make sure the dragon's not in sight, and then he'll try to also find his way up. With an 8.
Whoops.
All right.
And poor Rith, not having transformed into anything too acrobatic in the past, with a 9, doesn't foresee himself climbing very high.
Right now, Vaat is kind of just keeping his eye the opposite direction of the party to kind of, just cover our behind. I kind of look back at maybe the sounds of some frustrated party members trying to climb the rigging. So maybe I'll offer my assistance while just kind of keeping an eye out.
Would you like to offer assistance to the gnome or the dwarf?
Well, I see, my new friends, that you are both struggling to get in the ship. Should one of you like a hand?
You should go with me. I weigh the least.
And I'll kind of like coil myself near the base of the ship and kind of like grab onto you and like outstretch as far as I can, like grabbing onto the footholds to try to just give you a boost.
All right, cool. We climbed 2 inches.
So,
Damn short gnomes.
Rith, you can have advantage on that last roll. $165. Wow. I don't even know what the stat would have to
I
be.
think I made it.
Yeah, I think you may have overshot it just a bit.
Typos.
Climbed up and down
Exit
multiple
the
times.
atmosphere. What?
I mean, at the Kalima ship.
Beyond that.
So you have succeeded. Noctos, however, and Vaat are still on the ground. You have all of you exited the storm cloud. Well, I guess actually not. The storm cloud would have just traveled up with the ship, I guess, or up the side of the ship. And
It's centered on me.
yeah, so it would have followed Shava up. So that would mean that Vaat and Noctos, not only are you still on the ground, you are also out in the open-ish. So the other 3 of you reach the top gunwale of the ship and are able to kind of hop over. And you hear people still engaged in combat on the deck of this ship. It's impossible to see them as of right now because of this sand blasting everywhere. But you have heard several of them comment about where the storm is coming from, and they've deduced that it's magic, and they've backed away from it. So we have Vaat and Noctos still kind of on the ground. Noctos, you're like 2 or 3 feet off the ground, finding a hard time to find to get a foothold that's quite large enough for your dwarven foot.
Quickly, my friend. We are out of cover. And I'm kind of a little bit more nervous now. I don't think I'm related to dragons. I think we're different species lines, so I'm probably terrified.
Possibly for good reason. As you see the shadow pass overhead once more, and you hear the membranous wings of this beast kind of making a low humming noise. And she makes it to the edge of the clearing, this kind of flat space in between these dunes, and banks and starts to come back around again. And you know, Vaat and Noctos, that there is no way that she's not going to see you where you're currently standing. So starting with the two of you, what would you like to do?
I'm willing to kind of do the same boost maneuver here to get Noctis on the ship, and I can follow him up.
He'll go. Go. Save yourself. We will get up together.
At which point, I guess I will turn to kind of scale the ship. I figure I can kind of not necessarily find a foothold, but like a body hold into like the missing paneling. You said that there's like gold paneling on these. So maybe just to kind of muscle my way up the side of this thing.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and roll. It sounds like an athletics.
19, 19 on the die, total of 24.
All right.
As Vaat gets up to the top, I'm going to call out for him. Please don't tell anyone, but I don't think I can manage with this. And he's going to throw his halberd up to him to like reduce some weight and free up some of his hands. And he's going to try to climb as well.
Vaat will nimbly, grab at it with his tail.
Yeah, and you can have advantage this time, Noctis.
I'm going to need it. Hey, 21. Wait,
right.
no. That's a lie. That's a dirty lie. Give me just a second. 18. 18.
Oh, shame. Yeah, 18 is still good enough. So you have now successfully joined the swirling cloud of sand that is your party onto the deck of this ship. Just as you hear the approach of Bireshadjet once again, and you hear a clap of thunder, and the world brightens, though it is still perfectly daylight out, as this lightning bolt. You can feel it kind of course close to you through the air. It makes the hair on your arms and your head and everything stand on end. Comes next.
I don't know if anybody would notice this who's outside of the dust cloud, but it is an illusion. So like whenever the lightning strikes and the light flashes and like presumably there's some sort of explosive or concussive force, the sand is totally unaffected. It's still swirling around just a dust up like on a normal day.
Excellent.
But she is looking around. She's in the center of this thing, so she can't see very well. But she's like, "Are there any foes on the deck?"
Yeah, Khalid would have already like jumped in, trying to look around. I don't know if you need me to make a roll or if it would be obvious.
Are you mean jump out of the illusion? The swirling sand?
Yeah, like whatever minimum amount that I could
Sure.
leave that would like allow me to see, but still hopefully provide at least a little bit of protection.
Absolutely.
If you do need a roll, that is a modified 20 on perception.
Okay, excellent. And then if you would also give me a stealth. You can have advantage on that one.
Perfect. Much better. Alrighty, with advantage, that is actually going to be 24. So
Excellent. You are almost spotted by one of the sand pirates that you aren't familiar with, but you've heard enough stories to know they look like Kaliba's crew. He kind of turns at the last minute to kind of look in your direction, and just as you were kind of about to exit, you kind of shrink back just enough, and he kind of narrows his eyes and peers, and then he turns as another slave comes running by armed with a weapon and turns to run them down, essentially. You were not seen, but there are definitely foes on the deck of this ship.
Yeah, Khalid like slips back in towards the center of this sand that's providing them so much cover. And as quiet as he possibly can, that would still allow him to be heard. There's at least one enemy on board, probably more. If we want to take the ship, we're going to have to fight for it.
Are there within sight inside, are there any like crates or barrels or something that we could hide behind?
Yeah, there are definitely those kinds of things on board. Most of them are kind of, netted or tied in place with really thick hempen rope. But there's definitely those kinds of things about. There may even be a couple of them that have been knocked loose or cut loose or exploded from the lightning that are kind of, milling about underfoot. But for the most part, it's pretty easy to avoid them.
Okay. So after listening to Khalid, Shava is going to turn to everyone else and say, we take the ship now, yes?
And Rith is going to reply with, well, we're already up here, and I don't see any other options, so why not?
Shava nods and moves over behind a barrel into, like, assuming a hiding position. And she's going to look over at everyone else and say, prepare yourselves. I'm going to banish the sands.
Rith is going to wait until the sands disappear to transform.
So, Jeremy, do I need to make... Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, if I can, if I can kind of track where that pirate was heading towards, like trying to follow his motion if he'll see him. I'm basically going to ready, like once this shroud goes down, I want to try to take him out if I can.
Absolutely.
So, Jeremy, would I need to make a stealth roll to hide behind this barrel, or is it just assumed because I have this sand barrier up too?
Yeah, for the moment, at least, all of you are perfectly hidden within the sand barrier. Now, if you're trying to, do something other than cancel the spell and then hide, then yeah, I would probably have you roll. But if you're hiding while this thing is going and then dropping it, then there's no reason to roll.
Cool. All right. Yeah. In that case, then once she gets into position and she's hiding, Shava's going to look at everybody else and make sure that they check in with her that they're good, and then she's going to drop the spell.
Was there anything else that anybody was readying, Vaat or Noctos, now that you have joined the group?
I definitely have my sword ready, but I think if anything, my attention is kind of trying to scan through these sands for where Bireshadjet is.
And if Noctos can get his halberd back before the sands drop, hopefully nobody else noticed that. And then as a thank you, whenever I have an action, I would like to cast Magic Weapon on Vaat's sword.
You can absolutely do that before the sandstorm is dropped.
Effectively a +1.
Vaat will kind of... He recognized the slight magical change in his weapon. He looks to you to kind of see if it was you, making the gesture, nods, and goes back to his...
It was definitely readily apparent. He actually takes out one of his water skins and gets it wet. And then it kind of looks like it's still dripping as it is imbued with Yabala's magic.
Right on. Absolutely. Solid.
All right, and then unless anybody else would do anything first or make any mention of stopping, Khalid would just jump straight for the pirate. Let's try to let him have it.
Okay, so we see this pirate running through with a kind of a really long-looking dagger. He kind of plunges this blade through the belly of this slave who kind of slumps up against the wooden staircase nearby and drops the the cudgel that it was carrying, she was carrying. And we kind of see him stand back up just in time for the shape and shadow of Khalid to come through this wall of sand as the sand begins to kind of die and fade and drop to the deck. Go ahead, Khalid.
Yeah, so it's like the wind. I imagine part of it from like the wings of the dragon, like pushing the sands away as the spell fades. Like the cover falls, and then just in an instant, Khalid is just like leaping towards this pirate. The gold kopesh in his right hand and a dagger in his left, and just with a couple of like quick slashes, just like unleashes a full flurry on this guy. So mechanically, it's just going to be a flurry of blows. So just full attack here.
Yeah,
That
they'll all
is
have advantage.
All right, so I'm pretty sure those are all going to hit. That is a 21, a 23, and a crit. So
Yeah, everything but the crit hits. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, they all hit.
damn, those pesky crits. All right, this is gonna hurt. It's gonna be 8 damage plus 7 damage, 15. It's gonna be 26 flashing and piercing damage as like the whirlwind of sand fades and just the whirlwind of swords and daggers replaces it. This Klee just shreds into this guy.
And what does it look like whenever you take him down?
Yeah, the first cut with the kopesh comes across his calf from behind, like dropping him down alongside the servant that falls. And then just like 2 quick dagger strikes, like one to his collarbone, the other just in his neck. Just with this ruthless efficiency and quickness of an assassin, will just take the dagger out, like kick the body over onto the body of the slave, and like just throw the blood off of the blades onto the deck of the ship, and just kind of like look over to the others to like nod that he's gone.
And the man utters little more than a gurgle as he eventually grows still and lifeless. The rest of you, now that these sands are gone, have noticed that there looks like there's probably another 4 or 5 men still on board in various places around the deck. And only 2 of them seem to still be engaged with any of the slaves that were left defending what was once your ship. Some of them kind of start to turn in your direction. Everyone, if you could please give me a perception roll. Okay. Noctos, Khalid, and Shava, the 3 of you notice something distinctly wrong with the ship that you're currently on. It is missing its mast and the sail that would go with it, as luck would have it. Okay. So if you guys would, we've got Rith transforming. Khalid just murdered somebody hardcore. And Shava is hiding. So Noctos and Vaat, now that you're kind of standing out in the open once again, what are you guys up to?
I think at this point I'd be just finishing up my ritual casting. Or not ritual, but the casting of that spell.
In proximity to me, how many, or what are the positions of the people fighting the slaves?
There are 2 of them that are within 30 feet of you.
Are these the same slaves that we freed before?
The ones that are fighting the pirates, yes. You're looking at pirates versus slaves, essentially. And the slaves once were serving Kaliba's ship as wind callers. And now they serve you more willing, or they did serve Civis more willingly until the assassin came along and took them away. You have no idea what capacity that they are working or living now.
All right. Well, I'm going to kind of, lock my eyes on what would appear to me as an unfair fight, and just go directly for the guy closest to me. I rolled a 17 for my attack.
That definitely hits.
For 11 points of damage.
And that is exactly how much it takes to take these guys down. So what does that look like, Vaat?
In my mind, I guess that wasn't the most honorable way of going about killing him, but he wasn't fighting honorable to begin with. So I kind of just charge him, and as I charge him, I'm sure I don't know if he would hear me or not, but kind of just shove him so he's looking at me, and as he goes to draw his weapon, I'll cut him across the chest, just kind of a light spray of blood as he collapses, and I look to square up with the next guy. And I'm probably actually going to action surge that one to go ahead and try and cut him down as well. Not as high on that one, 13 with mod.
That is still enough to hit him.
For a total of 10 damage this time.
I'll give it to you. What does it look like?
I think he kind of was like shocked at the monstrosity that cut down his buddy next to him, and before he could even react, just a horizontal swipe to kind of maybe not cut his head off, but open his throat enough to give him a second mouth, if you will.
Yeah, he collapses down onto the deck, and blood just completely starts to soak into the sand that was left from Shava's whirlwind. And he's not dead yet, but he's definitely not gonna make it.
And I think when the slaves see me, the wind callers, I won't make like direct eye contact. I'll look at them, look down, and try and kind of allocate the next enemy.
Yeah, the ones that were just freed of the men that were fighting them kind of look at you and brandish their weapons as if they're hesitantly going to try to defend themselves against you. And then whenever you bow and slither away, they kind of look confused for a moment, and they actually turn to one another. He's Naga. Why didn't he not attack us? Okay, and Natos.
Because he is with us. We are here to save you yet again. It was the slaves that were talking, right? Or no?
It was, yes.
Perfect.
And a look of recognition kind of comes over whenever they see you, Noctos. You lived. You're okay.
Aye. It has been quite a journey. But we have other things at hand.
They killed Civis.
Who?
Him. And one of them
Some
points.
wolfman?
One of them points up into the rigging. And high above, you see where the two cross pieces for the sails on these ships would have met, where they're kind of tangled together. You have found the mast from your ship, kind of sitting beside the other one, leaning against it. And where the two cross pieces for these sails kind of meet one another, you see two figures dueling, swords in hand, fighting with one another.
Khalid! And I'm going to point. And then I'm going to square up with Khalid and put my hands down, waiting for his foot. And I'm just going to stand there.
Yeah, absolutely. Khalid would just give like a firm nod of determination. Like he'd glance upwards and nod, and leap for for your foot, for your hands, rather.
Okay. So let me get an acrobatics from you, Khalid, and an athletics from you, Noctos. And Rith, while they're totaling those up, what are you transforming into?
Well, as we're going to rewind back to when Shaba dropped the barrier in the first place. As the barrier collapses, Rith grabs a handful of the sand and sprinkles it on his head, and immediately shrinks, just poof, for a second, and then rises up as kind of like Vaat, but bigger and more snake. So he's a sand cobra. Looks like a pillar of sand with a gigantic mouth and glowing eyes.
Fantastic.
And then that everything is almost already dead.
I believe there are at least 3 more left alive.
Oh, I heard 4 and 3 were dead, but I must have missed them. Okay, so Rith's immediately setting his eyes on the next closest one as Vaat is slaying his 2, and Khalid has already dropped 1 and is about to head up to where there's more fighting. So Rith's looking off to, I guess, slightly left of his center of vision and eyeing the nearest guy chasing around a slave.
Okay, so I'm sure with the movement that you get of being a snake that size, you can more than cover the distance to get to him. So as your snake, giant snake made of sand approaches, what'd you get?
Oh, let me roll that.
Your attack, sorry.
Okay, so he's going to do a lunging bite. I got reach of 10 feet, so I shouldn't have to be right up on the guy. And it is a 10 to hit, which is probably not very helpful.
No, unfortunately, it's not much of a miss. It would actually glance just barely off of the surface of his armor.
I'm going to say that in the midst of this extravagant transformation and having sand in his eyes still, and the surprise of everybody just falling around him, he's just slightly distracted and doesn't quite meet his mark.
Absolutely, man. It escapes your bite just barely.
What
was
that?
The last thing you said?
Right out of the way.
Yep. Okay. So, all right. So, you, Khalid, place your foot into the hands of Noctos. Noctos, you give a 2-armed hoist just as hard as you can up and over your shoulder. And Khalid, ever light of foot, you use his hands as a platform and kind of bend at the knee, and then at the apex of his lift, you launch yourself as hard as you can off of his palms. You sail upwards, and you realize that you're going to get high enough, but it's going to be tough to stick this landing. So go ahead and make one more athletics check or acrobatics check for me, if you would, please.
And that one is.
It sucked. I
not
want to
as
throw you an
good.
inspiration
Okay,
point.
acrobatics are. I have plenty. So yeah, it's a good idea. It's a point of inspiration. More of them. I forgot about that. That is significantly better. That's going to be a 23.
Pretty excellent. Yeah. There's some asshole that keeps giving those things out. 23. So yeah, you kind of notice that this is going to be difficult to land. You're talking about something that has, a standing surface on the top of it that is maybe 3 or 4 inches across of actual negotiable, territory. So you kind of start, flailing your arms out, trying to direct yourself just a bit, and you do manage to land basically on the arches of your feet, turned kind of against one another, and manage to balance your weight as this thing shifts and starts to wobble under your added weight just a bit. You can clearly see the two men fighting ahead of you. The back of which you see closest to you is Kaliba, a man that you've only known through. I will call upon his picture. The one standing opposite of him, whose face you see in glimpses as this man's back kind of bobs about defensively. The other one you can see the face of is the knoll that you know as Kamimwe, also known as the Ink of Messhiba. All right. Khalid has just landed. Noctos helped throw him up into the air. Shava, what are you up to?
Well, Shava looks up, and I want to make sure I understand this picture correctly. We couldn't find the mast. Has the mast broken off from our ship and it's leaning up against the mast of the other ship?
That's correct. It looks like it has fallen in between the two ships so that the base of the mast, where it broke from the ship, is in the sand between the two ships.
Dang,
and then it is
okay.
leaning against the hull of the other ship.
Okay. So it doesn't look like something that can be repaired. Not easily, anyway.
Not easily and not quickly, definitely.
Okay. And has there been any clear indication of which ship the dragon is attacking more often, theirs or ours?
Yes, actually, and I was about to get to that, but I was going to see if there was anything that you wanted to do before that happens.
Depending on which ship is getting attacked more, that'll affect my action. So I'm comfortable delaying until after you've said a little more.
Okay, sure thing. Rith and Vaat.
I had slayed 2 dudes, protected the slaves, and turned to the next opponent. I guess you were getting to that, but Bireshadjet was going to return, so I'm probably just looking for her.
And you, both of you, Shava and Vaat, you can both see her. She is finishing her turn and is coming back around to do another sweep of the ships.
Is there like anything on the deck of this ship that would provide any sort of cover, or is there a lower portion like below
There's
deck?
definitely a below deck, but you also have several crates and barrels and things, some of which Shava is currently hiding behind.
Maybe like some on the opposite side of the deck or closer to me or in between me and one of the opponents, just so I can like kind of coil up half of me and put it behind it, so I'm not just this giant worm for this large bird.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a place you can hide about however much of yourself you wish.
I feel like Vaat is actually going through like a crisis right now. He's never been in a prey scenario. He's always been, more predator on the chain. So he's kind of freaking out. I mean, I suppose everyone is in relation to a dragon, but in a more primal sense, I would say.
And Noctos? Oh, I'm sorry, not Noctos. Rith.
Rith is still reeling from his recent miss and probably doesn't even notice the dragon flying overhead. It's become background noise to him. So he's going to, since he missed with the bite, he's going to curl his tail around and try to constrict the guy that he just swooshed past. So for a constrict move, that is a 17 to hit.
Yes, absolutely will hit.
Okay, let me see my damage here. Where are my D8s? These weird thingies. Am I doing that math right? Yeah, okay. So that's 16 bludgeoning damage. So I'm going to say that probably crushes the guy in the process of trying to constrict him.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow. This guy's just gonna break. As the tail end of Rith swings around to constrict this guy, he snaps like a twig, and Rith doesn't really get to hold on to much as he falls between Rith's coils onto the deck of the ship in just a pile of broken flesh and bone.
Yes, absolutely.
And Rith is slightly disappointed on the inside.
And the blood from this man soaks into your sand body, absorbed and darkened to a maroon.
And so now I look kind of like Mars instead of the desert.
There you go. Okay, so Bireshadjet has come around, and you don't hear that stifling silence that you've heard, the smell of the ozone in the air. Not that any of you would know it by that name, but just the sensation, the smell of electricity. You don't smell that this time around. You don't hear that deafening silence. And just as the glassblower begins her dive, she pulls her wings downward, and a rush of air shoots downward, covering both ships and sending sand blasting. Everyone, if you would please, make me an acrobatics check. Khalid, I'm going to say that you're at disadvantage.
How do you do inspiration with disadvantage? So I can ask.
You can still use it to make the reroll.
Okay.
I guess. Damn, I don't know how we do that.
Just don't roll it at disadvantage. Just roll it normal.
Okay, so yeah, you can just do it, just a single die roll if you want.
All right. Well, I already rolled both of them. But if I were just looking at, you roll the lower one, just like it was regular inspiration, because I feel like it's cheap to like pick the higher one intentionally. Alrighty, that is going to be.
Okay. Noctos. Oh,
Right.
and 14 for a total of 30. So, okay, so Noctos and Vaat, both of you are knocked to the deck, prone, and kind of tumbled about from this tremendous force of wind and sand that blasts downward from her buffet. The rest of you managed to maintain your footing. Khalid, just barely. I don't know if maybe a piece of the rigging, a rope nearby or something, you were able to kind of reach out and wrap your hand in it just enough to keep you on. As far as the damage for anybody, actually, for those of you who failed, you'll be taking the full damage from this. For those of you who passed, you will be taking half. Full damage is going to be 14 points from kind of being tumbled about, as well as just the concussive force of the wind and the sand. Those of you who passed are still going to take 7. Effectively, just sand is abrasive, and just the concussion against your ears and things is just a little much. But as she has buffeted her wings downward, her momentum slows considerably, and she reaches her front 2 feet as she kind of lands with her back. She reaches her front 2 hands down and grasps with her long taloned reptilian feet hands a hold of Kaliba's ship. And then she starts making motion to take flight again. Everyone, if you would please, roll initiative.
Badass, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, for real. So we're not on Kaliba's ship. I keep getting these mixed up.
Right, we are not.
Okay.
Khalid, however, is.
Oh,
He is on the cross piece to their mast currently.
bummer, buddy.
Okay, I've got Noctos with an 18.
Jump back.
I've got Shala with an 8. And Vaat 7. And oh man. 8, 7, and 6. That and clean up. Okay. So first up we have Khalid. What are you doing, Khalid?
Khalid is watching this duel between these two people. Kaliba on one hand and the ink of Messhiba on the other. Do either of them look like they've taken any damage so far? Are they partway through this, or are they just now squaring off?
Kaliba actually looks more minor, has more minor damage, small surface cuts, abrasions, things like that. The Knoll that you know as Kamimwe has definitely been pretty decently injured already. He's bleeding from at least one wound in his shoulder that looks like it's pretty deep. But he's tough, and you know that.
Well, I think right now Khalid is less concerned about acting and more concerned about reacting. So he's going to kind of try to tread a little bit closer to where this duel is. But I'm going to wait, and I'm going to try to ready an action here until one of them hits the other. Win.
You're cutting out real bad. So I think it sounds like you're going to ready an action for when one of them lands a blow. You're going to step in and stab or attack Kaliba from the back.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically readying. And as he does so, he's gonna reach down to one of the pouches and pull out the mask that they took from the temple so long ago, and he's gonna slide it onto his face. At the duel now through these eye holes in the mask as he starts kind of gently treading towards them, waiting for something to happen.
Okay. So yeah, you kind of just gingerly walk forward, kind of getting the feel for the sway of this thing as these two men exchange blows, and you press near. The slaves and the pirates continue to wage war on one another, but it's very, very clear that these slaves are not trained warriors, and these pirates have seen more than their fair share of bloodshed. So this is definitely not a conflict that these slaves would normally stand a chance of winning. And that kind of plays itself out across the battlefield of these two ships. Noctos, you're up.
With the act of this ancient dragon landing and starting to pick up the ship, he's going to kind of be awestrucken, and his arms are going to kind of go limp as he's holding his halberd, and his jaw's just going to drop. And just kind of stand there.
Okay, so as you say, awe, something akin to fear kind of numbs your limbs, and you stand there staring in somewhat shock. The The ancient blue dragon looks down, and her massive eyes lock with yours. And she just stares for a long moment. Her neck, very long and serpentine, kind of allowing her head to stay in the same position, though her body is moving no small amount as she's preparing to take this ship into the air. Okay. The two men engage, and Kaliba finds an opening and steps forward for swinging. Hang on. Everything's goofing up here.
Spoilers.
All this stuff you guys have seen, I think.
I know, it's just checking.
I hope. I laid my pad down on top of my keyboard. Big mistake. So yes, he swings at the Ink of Messhiba, but misses terribly. As even though injured, the Ink of Messhiba kind of shuffles backwards along this mast, his paws kind of leaving small scratch marks as they're kind of dug in. Oh, and okay, the Ink of Messhiba is going to turn to him and attempt to return the favor. And rolls the exact same thing. And misses likewise. Which brings us to Shava.
Okay, so Shava is looking up at this mast on her ship. She's looking over at the other ship, and she's seeing that a dragon's trying to pick it up and carry it away. There are like 3 slave drivers, or pirates, I mean, still on this ship. Is that right?
Yes, I believe there are still 3 of them.
Okay, and yeah, I guess what I want to do then, so I imagine I'm behind these barrels and there's like a broken half mast in the middle of the ship, and there's a dude who's standing next to this half mast. What I want to do is dive out from my cover, do a sneak attack on this guy, and then try to roll and hide behind the mast before he can find me. So that is a standard action to attack and then a bonus action to hide right afterward. All right. So now I know that when I have advantage, I get sneak attack, but does that mean like if I'm attacking unknown, like from hiding, I get advantage, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, cool. So I got a 21 to hit. And that's going to be 7, 10, 14, 17 damage against this guy.
And that'll absolutely do the trick. So what does that look like?
Nice. So yeah, Shava, she's looking up at this mast. She's looking out at the other ship, and she just says, she's about to say, "We're on the wrong ship." And then she sees the dragon fall down. She's like, there is no right ship. And she just dives forward. She pulls out her rapier as she's diving. She comes up to a kneeling position and does an upward strike across this pirate's stomach. And she kind of pirouettes from where he's standing and immediately makes this roll to hide behind the mast that he's right next to. And that's going to be a 11 for stealth.
Okay. And it looks as though the other remaining pirates that are nearby have either paid you no attention or they are not able to see you as you very quickly kind of duck behind this shelter. Vaat, it is your turn.
So Vaat in the wind, the gale force wind that pummeled me for 14 points of damage. I almost think that the crate I was hiding behind maybe like lifted up and like smacked into me, knocking me off balance and pushing me over or something of the sort. So I kind of have to, right myself, which I'm not exactly sure where I'd be positioned on the boat. Would that have pushed me maybe to the edge, or?
Sure. Yeah, you might have like kind of slammed up against the gunnel and kind of helped hold on to that so that you didn't just completely go open over.
Right. And maybe like my sword is not to be found. At which case I relocate it to my hand. Is there anyone? We still had two guys left, which Shaba just got rid of one. So one guy left.
Yes, I believe that makes. I think that makes two. No. Riff killed one before, so yeah, I think there should only be one left on this ship currently.
So I'm looking at him, and just to clarify, the dragon is picking up the other ship, not the one we're on.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm less panicked. I'm looking for that last pirate.
Yeah, you can absolutely see him.
Is he?
These ships are not overly large.
Okay,
they're probably only maybe 40 feet in total.
So yeah, I'd easily be able to get up near him. I'm gonna roll to attack it in kind of like a downwards fashion. I rolled a 14 on the die for a total of 19.
Yes, that'll absolutely make contact with him.
For a total of 13 points of damage.
And what does it look like when you take him down?
Just another clean. I'm not trying to be overly fancy. This is more of the efficiency of my training. I'm just trying to cut these guys down to eliminate the threat immediate to me outside of Bireshadjet. I'm trying to say that name as much as possible to be able to actually say it.
It's a toughie. So you managed to clear the deck on this side of the field of these pirates quite handily. And Bireshadjet has dug her talons in to the other ship and brings her wings down again in a powerful downstroke. So once again, everyone, please, if you would, make acrobatics checks. Khalid, once again, unfortunately, this will be at disadvantage for you.
Just gonna keep earning these points. I'm just gonna roll regular. That's gonna be a 13 on the die for a mod 20.
Can I get any kind of like cover bonus for being behind this mast?
Roll a percentile.
That's a 63.
Okay, so yes, you can have a +2 to your saving throw.
Nice. Okay.
You get a bonus for weighing more too.
No, I don't believe so.
I tried.
Okay, so it looks like everybody's actually going to pass this time around. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Noctos, once again, you failed as this concussive force of wind and sand knocks you back to the ground once again. Full damage this time is only 7 points. So for those of you who passed, you will only take 3. This was not apparently quite as powerful of a buffet from her wings. But she does manage to push herself upwards, the front half of her body lifting up into the air, and the ship groans and creaks as it comes free of the sand that was holding it. Sand just begins pouring away from the hull of this ship. And before long, she's almost completely upright, kind of stretched to her full length almost, as only the pads of her back clawed feet are still touching the ground. Kaliba, you on this mast are quickly rising into the air, higher than you already were. And it is your turn.
So Khalid's like watching this duel play out, like neither side making much progress. And then he like feels the sensation of rising, and he just like begins looking down. Like at an angle connect like aligned with the ship, or would I have to jump now to get down to our ship again?
So the ship from, or the mast from your ship was kind of tangled up in some of the rigging ropes and sails and things. And as this ship starts to rise, the weight of the mast starts to pull itself free. And as of now, it is still kind of, the wood cross pieces are kind of rubbing against each other, and there's splinters flying everywhere because the mast is pulling itself down so fast. And within seconds, they're going to separate from each other.
Feels this, and he looks, and he's gonna make a quick glance upwards towards the ink of Messhiba, kind of like peering, almost kind of as around as he can get from Kaliba. And I don't know if the ink would have the wherewithal to notice Khalid in the struggle or not, but if he did, he would just see this like now masked form of what used to be Khalid with this death mask on. He begins like whispering like the different like tenets of the order. Death to deserters, death to betrayers. Just like going through like these different restrictions and mantras that now both he and the ink have violated, with the ink betraying him. And as he does so, like the mask is going to glow with like some almost these like black runes come across it. And the ink is going to need to make a DC 14 Constitution.
Okay, he got a 14 on the die, so as long as he doesn't have a minus, he does not. So he did pass, but not by much.
Yeah, so he's going to like feel this like almost like soundless shriek. Like it doesn't go through his ears, but he can like feel it resonate down through his body. As like the water and life is drawn from his body, he's able to resist it with a Khalid share, but he's still going to take 30 necrotic damage. The mask drains him.
This is one of the death masks, correct? Excellent.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I for some reason was picturing the silver mask that you got off of the guy with the golden robes, but now I understand. Yes. So yeah, he's kind of almost paused in his fighting, as he kind of, almost the way a dog does when they don't completely understand. He kind of cocks his head just slightly to the side, making sure that his ears are kind of turned in your direction. And you see him kind of shake his head, and he makes kind of a, kind of whimpering bark as he kind of tries to bring himself back to the situation. But you can see he looks older and gaunt. Go ahead, sorry.
And with that, Khalid's going to hope that he's done enough to turn the tide. He has kind of a goal against the ink. He wants him to lose this battle, but he's not well to jump in himself right now. He's quite badly hurt. Begins scrambling as best as he can back down the mast now. I have 40 speed because of my monk ability, so to get me back onto a deck level.
Okay, so go ahead and make me another acrobatics check.
Alrighty, that is a 19 on the dice. A 26.
All right. So you manage to retreat backwards and time your leap just so that you manage to jump from the cross piece that you were on and fall no more than about 5 feet before your feet land on the descending crosspiece of the mast. And you're effectively kind of riding this downward. The pirates have killed. Sorry, go ahead, Khalid. Did you have something else?
I was just gonna say, like, as he lands, he's gonna like take off the mask and like shove it back in a pouch and just kind of like try to duck it and hope he's not spotted. That's not like a hide or anything. I don't think like that, but it's just.
Yeah, as of right now, you're still on the mast, kind of falling.
Ah, perfect.
Okay. So the pirates have pretty much wiped out most of the slaves who seem to be defending this ship. And the ones that were on the other ship that is now airbound have begun trying to rapidly throw themselves overboard, hoping that the sands might be a better choice than the Blue Dragon. Several of them land wrong and either die on impact or break legs, ribs, things of that nature. A few of them manage to land in such a way in softer sand or what have you that they seem like they're going to be all right, and they start to get to their feet, very quickly making their way towards Kaliba's ship. I'm sorry, not Kaliba's ship. Civis's old ship, where you are currently. Noctos.
So from the force of this second wing buffet, Noctis is going to go prone yet again, hitting his head on the deck. He ends up losing his concentration on magic weapon. And then he's going to kind of pick himself up from his daze, and he's going to cast Cure Light or Cure Wounds on himself. For 7.
I kind of picture that maybe the water that has kind of been clinging to the blade of Vaat has fallen or dripped away all of a sudden. And Noctos, maybe you kind of reach out with your hand and like pull that water to yourself. And that's maybe what you use to kind of help knit your wounds a bit.
Absolutely. I love it. But part of it stays, gets caught up on that, and not being able to draw it to myself. I'm going to bonus action to Healing Word, and I'll redirect it to him and just have it absorb into his skin.
Excellent.
And that'll heal you for 6.
And I feel like I could probably maybe. I mean, obviously, I would feel it. Maybe like small tendrils of water come off the handle of the blade onto my arm or something, and it kind of just patches up the abrased scales and things I've acquired here in this wind storm.
Absolutely. You kind of watch maybe with some amount of awe yourself as this water seems to somewhat heal your wounds.
I've come in contact with magic, but water is too much of a commodity to be played with, I guess, as I would see it.
Yeah, that makes great sense. So the two that are still in the upper rigging of Kaliba's ship, both Kaliba himself and the Ink of Messhiba, are now rapidly abandoning this fight, realizing what is going on, and are trying to make their way to safety. Both of them essentially jump down on opposite sides of the sail, using various bladed weapons to slow their descent as they tear down the thick canvas with their blades down to the deck below and disappear from sight. Shava, you're up.
Okay, so all the bad dudes are dead on our ship. The other ship's getting lifted into the sky. And it looks like these two that were fighting up in the rigging are going to the other ship. Is that, or are they trying to get over to our ship?
They have slid down the sail of the ship that they were on, the one that the dragon is currently holding, and basically came from the rigging up down to the deck of that ship, but they are still airborne.
Okay. And I'm assuming there's like, you said these are only 40-foot long ships, so they probably are not multi-deck.
No, they have a below deck and the deck itself, and that's about it.
Okay, and so it's just like a rudder or something that guides this thing, like a tiller?
Yeah, there's basically kind of a small shack, a captain's quarters building at the back. So I guess technically there's a second deck on top of that, and that's probably where the helm is located.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really know what I would do. I think I'd just like to delay.
Okay. Then that brings us to Vaat.
So Vaat is, this guy is just collapsed in front of him. He's kind of gauging his environment right now. He's noticed. He's actually probably got his attention on Khalid, who was, though controlled, still somewhat falling to our decking. So maybe I'm still on the edge of the ship as before, but I'm maybe going to reach a hand out to help him get back safely to the ship. One thing I would like to mention is I have weaved my tail through any kind of like holes or anything to kind of give myself like a brace for any other kind of windstorm activity coming our way.
Okay, fair enough. And you're just going to kind of ready in action, essentially?
Maybe not so much as, go as far as to put my arm out, because I'm sure Khalid is capable of, handling himself, but just
just in case he needs the backup.
Yeah, a safety net. Maybe looking to Noctos and to Shava, seeing if they're, okay. I know Noctos was beaten around a little bit, so just kind of, gathering the information at hand, really.
Sure.
Shava looks real sandblasted.
Same.
Okay. So you kind of wind yourself in through some of the holes that were caused by these tendrils of the lightning breath of Bireshadjet. You managed to kind of get yourself a firmer purchase aboard this hull. And she, the dragon, the glassblower, continues to ascend. And she kind of looks down, taking her eyes off of the group of you and looking at something on the deck of the ship that she's holding. You're assuming it to be Kaliba and Kamemwe. And she blasts another bolt of lightning downward. And as she does so, the mast breaks free from the ship that is airborne. Several coins also rain down from where this mast rips a hole in the top of the deck. And all of it comes raining down towards all of you. Everyone, if you could please give me a dexterity saving throw.
I've been getting decent rolls, but my dexterity is just not what I need it to be.
Yeah, okay. So it's a little bit easier to dodge most of the falling debris. And the only two that are caught unaware are Noctos, of course, and Rith. The two of you apparently catch, a part of this mast or something that you're standing near catches it and kind of explodes under the weight. And the rest is kind of just these coins just falling down and peppering all of you. Full damage is 10 points of bludgeoning. If you passed, you take half of that. And that brings us to Rith. It is your turn.
Rith feels like it's been an eternity since he crushed that guy a few seconds ago. And as this ship is now up in the sky, and there's nobody left to kill on board the ship Rith is on, Rith's looking around, taking in the scenery, and gets caught unawares of a barrel that flies up off the deck while the mast is crashing through, and it pops him in the face, but he just shakes it off because he's made of packed sand. Yeah, I think he did, Jeremy, but that's all right. Not the big deal. But at the moment, he doesn't see anything other than, as he shakes himself off, he sees Khalid sliding down this mast, heading towards the party on the ship, and Rith's initial response is he's going to lay down on the deck and coil himself into kind of a trampoline-esque shape. So if Khalid fumbles and needs to fall somewhere, hopefully he's provided a large enough target that will soften the blow somewhat.
Okay, excellent.
And that's about all he can do. He's just waiting and anticipating now.
So, Khalid, you are still on this falling mast, and you see your friends down below, or compatriots, whatever you might refer to them as, down below, kind of scrambling, and it looks as though they're trying to prepare themselves to help you. Just about the time that you realize this, the bottom of the mast slams into the sand down beneath. The soft sand that was kind of churned over whenever this ship was listed out. And it sinks probably a good 8 feet into this sand and comes to a very abrupt stop at a sharp angle sticking up out of the sand. And you're kind of now sliding down this. So if you would please make me one more acrobatics check.
Yeah, 23.
And tell me what it looks like as you slide down this mast as far as you need to then get back onto the deck of the ship with your friends.
It's like the down and sliding. Until it with every back towards it to like make it up over the edge.
Is everybody okay? You were breaking up real bad again, brother. I was just making sure it wasn't just me. So yeah, you've kind of slid down this until you get right to the point that you need to be, and then you leapt towards the deck.
Yeah, he just like with everything he has back towards the deck, just like barely managing to clear like a bit before like doing like a tuck and roll to fall.
Absolutely, yeah. And you kind of pop back up onto your feet, almost surprised at your own abilities in this situation. perhaps.
Yeah, like I imagine he probably would be surprised, but he's like in such like adrenaline mode that he doesn't even have like the ability to like take it up, and like he's just like breathing heavily, like just barely managing to even in the first place.
Excellent. Take a point of inspiration, Jeff. And that brings us to Noctos.
Noctos is going to kind of limp over to Shava and offer her my water skin. Say, drink, please. Yabala will gift you her healing magic.
Thank you, thank you. She's going to drink greedily from the thing.
I rolled a 1 and a 2 on my second level spell here. So that's 7 points for you.
Okay, great.
She
She goes to drink, and it turns out there's not as much water in there as she thought. So she takes some of it, she's like, thank you, my friend.
and then Noctis is going to turn to Khalid as well. And bonus action, another healing word. I'll probably get more on this one.
I was just about to comment that.
7, exactly the same.
But your attention divided somewhat. You dispense the healing magics of Yabala over 2 of your injured comrades.
So I'm going to say it from the water that has spilled during the battle, there being a little bit on the deck. Noctos is going to kind of gather it together, and that's actually going to be the point that Khalid lands on to kind of cushion his fall a little bit, absorbing into a little bit of healing.
Excellent. Yeah, between that and the coils of the sand snake of Rith, the impact is a little less than it probably would normally be for Khalid. High above, you see 2 figures leap in concert from the side of the ship that's little more than a silhouette at this point. And as they begin to fall, one of them you can see is the knoll, falls like a stone to the sand below, and then hits with a small plume. But the other, the dark-skinned man known as Kaliba, falls but a short way before Bireshadjet reaches out with her bottom talon and latches onto him and catches him midair. And you hear, with very little trouble despite the distance, "I think not. You stole from me, and not just my coin. I am not finished with you yet." And he screams in terror. Maybe pain. It's hard to tell the difference. Shava.
She's watching this happen, and as the dragon is flying away, she's reaching over, like kind of without looking, and trying to touch the elbow of Noctos, and then she ends up touching his shoulder instead because he's short, and she says, "We need to get out of here."
Ow.
I will walk at this point. I cannot take any more frights for today. I need time to rest and recuperate.
We have rebuilt the ship before, but I don't believe there are any that can power its sails. Perhaps we can go below deck to regather our strength, but we'll have to come up with a plan from here.
Yes. Below decks. And she's not even really looking at anybody. She's shell-shocked. She turns around and she just starts looking around for the stairs down.
That 1,000-yard stare going.
Yeah.
That brings us to Vaat.
Vaat is also kind of awe-stricken, but maybe less scared and more impressed of maybe her reflex to catch this guy out of the air. I'm kind of like backing up towards wherever I can hear maybe Shava's voice descending down, like the change in tone. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, you have no problems kind of finding where the rest of them seem to be headed.
Yeah, I'm keeping my weapon drawn and kind of just keeping my sight on this massive reptile.
And they're all still coins that are falling down, just so everyone is aware. They have not ceased just yet. Okay. So as these coins continue to rain down, I'm going to need another dexterity saving throw from everyone. Shava, you've made your way to the stairs down, so you can have advantage on this saving throw. Good old Noctos. Soaking up that damage. Okay, Noctos, Vaat, and Rith. Oh, and Khalid. So the hole in the hull must have increased with the strain of being hefted into the air, and more coin has rained down. Total damage this time around is 8 points of bludgeoning. If you pass, you take half with 4. And then you hear it. The deafening silence. You smell that smell. The smell of a rainstorm. And looking up, you see Bireshadjet open her mouth once again. And then your vision turns to white as you hear the crackle of lightning emit from her mouth once more. I would like a volunteer, please. Baron.
Sure.
I saw Baron throw his hand up first, so
You know I'm always willing.
we'll go with Baron. So, Vaat, after a moment, you hear a ringing sound. You realize that it's coming from your ears. And then it's very quickly replaced with the steady beat, very quick beat, of your heart as the blood pumps through your eardrums and your head and your body. And you realize that you are in fact not dead, like you may have expected. Your vision starts to kind of return, and you see a very strange sight. The rest of you see this in turn as well. You are in the branches of a tree. But this isn't what you might expect by that initial description. This tree is formed of gold, silver, and copper that has been flash welded together in the path that this lightning bolt took. And this tree is effectively upside down. These limbs, these tendrils, stretching out in all directions, and eventually meeting a trunk, if you will, the core of the lightning bolt itself, and extending up in the air towards the direction of the silhouette of a large ancient blue dragon carrying away a treasure vessel. And with that, the five of you find yourselves free from combat, free from danger, at least of the immediate kind.
Java's eyes are just barely poking above the deck of the ship and looking out at what's happening, and she looks up and she sees this gigantic fused coin tree, and then she just ducks back underneath the deck.
Noctis is going to head after the initial shock kind of wears off. He's going to head over to help Vaat or just Vaat out of the tree if there's any way that he can do that.
Yeah, you can absolutely break most of these welds fairly easily. Some of the smaller branches especially are only like a single coin, kind of in succession.
I feel like where I'm at, it's... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If it's necessary to do that, I will, but I'd like to try to keep it intact as a memento of this event.
Absolutely. But you might have to break a few just to get, his limbs free here and there, but you can mainly, largely keep this section intact and extract him, if you will.
I feel like this is almost when, I don't know if you guys ever had snakes as a pet, but my aunt didn't like you can't let them get into like weaved shit because you can't get them out, and I'm pretty much stuck right now. I'm weaved inside this coin tree.
Yeah, there's a lot of yelling back and forth. Vaat's telling Noctis not to pull him that way. Ow! Things of that nature.
You're nodding me. You are nodding me right now.
Okay, I must have missed something. When you said we were in a tree, I thought this tree appeared and our ship had blown into it, and now I see we are welded in.
Yes, it basically looks like a tree. It's a lightning bolt coming down, and
yeah, I got that.
Basically just it fused these coins together.
I didn't realize we were fused with the tree.
Well, you're not fused to the tree. Oh. You're just kind of amongst the branches.
Oh, okay.
If you will.
Still, that's not quite what I had in mind.
Yeah, so Khalid, I imagine that during the actual blast of lightning, he probably fainted just from the shock. And he kind of comes to just a short temporarily blackout from how hurt he is. And he's gonna climb up, his head still kind of buzzing, and his ears still kind of ringing with that noise and that energy. And somehow his eyes are not drawn to this tree. His eyes are drawn to the spot where the ink fell. And he can't help but look to see if his body is actually there and if he's dead, or if he's managed to pull another trick.
You look out to the spot where you saw his darkened form collide with the ground. And there is a small depression there. But it doesn't take you long to realize that it's not a depression big enough to indicate someone medium-sized having hit the sand. And you realize that it is simply his pack. His gear. And you see no sign of him.
Yeah, a worried expression kind of falls down on Khalid's face. He'll turn around back away from the rail and slide down his back against the side of the ship. Just kind of with his head on his hands. He just mutters, "Damn it."
About the time that you are descending the back of the ship, several of you hear a solid thunk from below decks. And then you hear very quickly a shh, quiet.
This is something that Shava is capable of processing in her mind, and so as opposed to a giant dragon and gold lightning trees. So she's immediately producing her rapier again and moving toward the sound, as if convincing herself that she's fine. She's not. She's fine.
Anyone else?
I'm working my way out of the tree.
Still helping with that.
All right, Rith. Oh, whoa. Didn't mean to click on the screen. That was interesting. Okay, so Rith is the last one to wake up. As he sees that flash, he feels his life has ended. Images start running through his mind, his studies before he came to Baklabesh, and his studies with the Suknos and the adventures he's had thus far. And one face kept popping in mind, his lost comrade, Alia. He keeps seeing her in his mind and hearing her voice, and then he hears a whisper, a voice that he hadn't heard before but can't place it. And then he comes to. He realizes he has dropped his snake form amongst his terror as he felt he is dead. He accidentally just lost it. And he wakes up strewn among these branches, looking around, realizes he is still alive. And he breathes a sigh of relief and then immediately sits up. Wait, where am I? What happened? Where'd everybody go? And he sees Vaat stuck in the branch.
Vaat and Noctos, you are mere feet away from him.
And he sees Noctos trying to get Vaat untangled, and Vaat just seems like he's tied up in a knot. And Rith is actually going to join Noctos in trying to break him free.
You've come to your senses. Do you now know where you are?
I believe I am present. I don't know if I'm all here.
Have you ever been all here?
I don't think I ever was. I think it's a druid thing.
I have not met many of your kind, so perhaps that is the case.
If you were a druid, you would understand that you were torn between a physical realm and a spiritual one, where you can see the spirits of nature and hear voices that are not there. But you are also here experiencing the now.
And Vaat in his stressed out, hearing voices isn't always the best I hear. Are you sure that these voices are spirits of the woods?
I wouldn't say they're the woods, but we are in a place of wildlife, are we not? They could be birds, they could be small creatures, lizards, bugs, anything. All of nature speaks. Like Shava, she can interpret the movement of the sands. I interpret the songs on the wind.
Interesting. I did not know the insides of the druids.
You get used to it after a while.
Not sure I ever did, Vaat. That was... Rith, go back to talking to your wind bugs.
Khalid's gonna eventually find the strength to bring himself back up onto his feet, and letting Shava descend further down into the ship's deck. Is going to stand up and attempt to go down there as well, following behind her a little bit while the rest of them are getting out of this metal lattice work that's been created.
You descend the stairs only a few feet or yards behind where Shava has already mounted these stairs, headed down into the darker underhull, the underdecks. And the ship is kind of listed from the snapping of the mast and some of the combat that had just happened and transpired, the things falling down on top of it. So it's at a slight tilt, but it's not enough to trip you up or make it difficult to traverse. And it takes a moment for your eyes to kind of adjust to the dimmer light down here. There's kind of shafts of light kind of beam down through the holes that are in this now damaged vessel, and the airborne particles of sand kind of glitter almost through these beams. But you're fairly certain you see a group of people that are kind of huddled into a mass near the floor, all the way in the corner of this space. And even from this distance, even from the poor lighting, you can tell that they are trembling.
What are you doing here?
They all kind of collectively gasp as you speak out. And you see one face kind of look up and make eye contact with you, only briefly, before his face kind of falls away from yours. We are wind callers.
Wind callers? You can take us away from here.
Perhaps, maybe.
Yes, we need your help very badly.
Well, there's only a few of us.
Is it enough to carry the boat away from here?
Sail. Or a mast.
There's no sail?
By the
definitely
sands.
not. One of them looks gravely injured. It looks like there's a pretty significant wound to his shoulder, and it's bleeding decently well. He's kind of sitting a little off from the huddle. He's actually not in the huddle. He's kind of leaning against the interior of the ship and looks a little peaked. And aside from that individual, it looks like there's probably 4 others.
Khalid, do you know these people?
Khalid's gonna like walk a little bit closer to the group, trying to get within close enough that even within the dim light he can like see faces, and he's gonna go across the 4 people grouped, and then this one person off to the side. Try to kind of like peek at faces and see if he knows anybody.
Okay. Roll me some kind of investigate or insight or history or whatever.
It's an 11 insight, so probably not much.
Judging by the clothing and the meager jewelry and things that they have, I mean, they look just like the people that have crewed this ship that you've been on for some time. There was a number of them that were a part of the crew, probably about a dozen. Some of their faces are kind of cut up and bruised, and it does not look like they have been treated very well recently, but they definitely all appear familiar to you.
Khalid looks back towards Shava. Yes, these were the crew members that used to help us. Or it was stolen.
We need to make them well. We need their help. We need Noctos. He can help. I will go get Noctos.
Look, this condition to go anywhere. It's gonna take more than healthy wind collars to get us out of this mess.
Shava is going to walk up to Khalid and like hold him by the forearms and look deep into his eyes and say, how do we get out of here?
Oh, unless you have a way to attach a mast back to a ship to walk.
Her shoulders slump. And she says, "Where are we even walking to? I have tried to trust the sands, but they have only led me here, and I do not know where we are to go from here. I wish my master was here with us."
Well, we know the direction that we were heading in. You can try to walk it, but in this condition, I don't know if we'll be able to make it. Like a 7-day walk or something like that, right, Jeremy? Or was that even that was on horses even? I
Yeah,
think.
it was on horses. You know, which your horses, some of which I think have expired.
Yes.
Okay.
Like Browns, just for a week at least away from where we were trying to go. That's not enough, even for the 5 of us, I'd imagine, to make it. Nonetheless, trying to bring 5 more injured people along with us.
I feel the sand shifting around us. I feel that soon they will bury us under their weight.
And about that time, there's a hurrah of success as Rith and Noctos manage to free Vaat from this coin tree. And this is where we're going to take our break this evening. So we're going to take a 10-minute pause. If you've got to go to the bathroom, go ahead and do that. Refill your drink, smoke them if you got them, kiss your spouses, etc., etc., etc. If you're watching, thank you very, very much for tuning in tonight. Hang tight. After these messages, we'll be right back. I'm back from outer space. Okay. Once again, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. This is the Erasmus Expeditions. This is session 12 of On the Rise, an Egyptian-themed D&D game, 5th edition, that takes place in my homebrew world of Rostfin. I have another campaign that I also run online titled The Ashes of Heaven, which takes place in the same world, just on a different continent. That is an Oriental adventure. You can find it also on this channel, and yeah, check it out. But it was brought to my attention, I think Chad Nick actually brought this up. This is, in fact, session 12, which I believe, unless I'm mistaken, we are about a year into this.
Yeah.
For Trevor and Mike, at the very least, who were initial players in session 1.
That is right, isn't it? It's about once a month for 12 sessions. This is session 12, yeah.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it had been quite that long, which is kind of cool.
Feels like it's been longer.
The group has definitely gone through some changes.
And there has been a lot that has happened.
Yeah. You guys have covered quite a bit of ground.
A lot has happened in the last session. And then this one, it's been nonstop, charioteers, sandstorms, meeting people, getting attacked by dragons, and now this.
The life of an adventurer.
Rith has kind of forgotten that he's... when you mentioned that vase, it's like, oh yeah, I'm carrying that, aren't I? But like I said, it's going to require some kind of a cue, like all of a sudden, poof happens because Rith is just blanked. He's still reeling from that shock. Shock and awe. Hey, but nobody's dead yet.
That's true.
We almost had a few in that last one.
Honestly, you're like, hey, I need a volunteer. I was like, oh, so I guess this was a quick one for a campaign. Old Vaat's kicking the bucket.
See?
Monsters tend to do that.
It's not always bad stuff that happens when you volunteer.
Hopefully we'll be getting into some story. Yeah. You got electrocuted.
You went out with a bang.
Flash.
But
by the way, Pinnacle Entertainment Group launched a Kickstarter today for a Flash Gordon RPG for Savage Worlds.
Interesting. Very interesting.
He's savior of the universe,
It's never one that I really could get all that into, to tell you the truth. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but it just never really grabbed a hold of my attention.
I really like the idea of Sword and Planet stuff, but I tried to read John Carter way back in the day, and I just couldn't get into it, which is saying something because I love Conan and Lovecraft and stuff, but I couldn't get into this one. And
I actually enjoyed the movie from that decently.
Oh, the one that came out not too long ago?
Yeah, the Disney one.
I really want to watch it. I haven't seen it yet, but I feel like Taylor Kitsch, he gets such a short end of the stick in Hollywood, man. Every movie he's in, it is perfectly enjoyable, but it's like a total flop in the box office.
Yeah, he did pretty good in no, that was Emil Hirsch, never mind. Wasn't he the one that cast as Gambit?
Yeah, in the Wolverine movie. Yeah.
And it was a bad choice.
Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't great.
Yeah. All around, that movie was kind of a turd.
Yeah.
All right.
Alas.
Speaking of turds.
Jeremy's going to be right back.
I'm here, guys. Just let
Great
me
segue.
No, so jumping back into the fray, the shit, if you will. So you have found these, when I say there were five individuals who have kind of been banged up, but are definitely intact. They will survive. You're fairly certain. The one that has the shoulder wound, maybe not, but I mean, he's hanging in there for now, at least. And you have these 5 wind callers, and from what you can tell, you and these 5 are the only survivors of this fiasco. So what comes next?
If Noctos is summoned down, would a medicine check allow me to know if he would, like, how long he has? The guy with the shoulder wound, the wind
Yeah, I'm
collar?
fine with that.
16.
Okay. He's lost a pretty substantial amount of blood. But you know that you could probably simply what is the word? Stabilize his wounds, and he'd probably be fine for at least a day or two.
Do I think he, in his current condition, that he will make it another 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, I would say so. At least probably another hour or two in his current condition.
I'm going to dig out my priest pack, take out some incense, start laying some stuff out, and begin casting prayer of healing. It takes 10 minutes, and then whenever it goes off, up to 6 creatures of my choice get 2d8 hit points, plus my wisdom mod.
Excellent. So you kind of set up this impromptu shrine, if you will, down here in the inside the hull of the ship, and you can kind of instruct them to, gather around or what have you. Those that you intend to impart healing upon, at least.
I'm going to choose the 5 of us, and number 6 being the shoulder wind collar.
Okay, excellent. So I guess you gather the remainder of the party
And
down as
work
well.
on that healing because he doesn't need any.
Okay.
Move to another injured person.
So what is Rith going to be up to while this ritual is being cast?
He's gonna watch and learn, but he doesn't need to partake in it per se because all his damage was to temporary form.
Right. And Khalid, had you actually dropped down to the sands below? And are you doing something exterior from the ship at the moment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, while we're kind of going over, I think Khalid's sense of morbid curiosity would probably be too much. He probably would go over to where he saw the pack fall, from where the ink had landed. Check it out and see if there's anything there that was left behind.
Okay. If you would please give me both an investigate and an arcana roll.
Alrighty, that is a investigate. So that's a 17 investigate and an 11 arcana.
You apparently are either not well read enough in the magic arts, or at least are not familiar with what may or may not have been done here. But with an investigate, you do manage to find, somewhat buried beneath the surface of the sand, just a little ways under, is a small clay disc, effectively. That's probably no more than maybe 2-3 inches in diameter. And it has a rune that has been carved into it, and it has been snapped in half. But it's definitely not from the impact. You can tell that much just by the way that it's buried underneath the sand. It looks like it was snapped in half and then fell in 2 separate pieces.
As Clay's just like digging through the sand, he digs up these clay pieces and just kind of an intrigued look goes over his face and a concerned one with that 2 pieces. And unless there was anything else to find or dig through in the sand, he would head back with that.
Okay, and you arrive more or less towards the tail end of Noctos's ritual. So you're there to receive the blessing of Yabala as it is kind of doled out. And what does that look like, Noctos?
Everybody gets 12 points of healing, but he actually sets out all 6 of his water skins kind of around him in a circle, and it actually all spouts up and actually takes the visage of Yabala. And Noctos prays directly to her, potentially even has a small conversation about thanking her for everything that she's done for us and guiding us on this path, and that we need her help once again. And then the visage will go to the 6 individuals and kiss them on the forehead, and then retreat back into the waterskins.
And as this healing magic kind of washes over you, as well as to 2 of the slaves, since Rith opted out. Okay. The one with the shoulder wound, at the very least, kind of gives a sigh, kind of a collective release of immediate concern. That he seems to realize that he's not going to die. The other one had mostly superficial wounds, bruises about the face, things like that the water definitely helps to curb. And you all realize that within probably another 4 or 5 hours that the sun will eventually set here in the Korundu Desert. And as of now, you have no immediate means of travel other than by foot.
We have rebuilt this boat once before. Does it look like it is in such a way that it could be put back together?
Potentially, yes. Again, you had a lot more hands that knew what they were doing. You had people who were trained with sailing ships and things of that nature, and you seem to be in short supply of those now. There seems to only be the 5 individuals who may know anything about sailing, other than what you have kind of picked up since being here.
Ross is stuck in a tree.
Yes, there is also the tree that is kind of part of the boat at the moment. And yes, the mast also was not broken last time. That is a considerable hurdle. You also realize that the rudder is also broken, but that will probably be a much easier fix. Your guess is that if anybody has mending, that it might be able to fix it. Go ahead, Barry.
Could we maybe chunk this tree in a way that could haphazardly work as a mast?
You know what? I hadn't really thought of that, but yeah, I mean that sounds sounds pretty cool actually. It's definitely going to take some effort, but you think you might be able to rig this thing up as a mast?
Well, I mean, I guess I don't know the exact means in which it's welded to the boat, but I mean, I'm sure it's more attached than the broken half mast is that's on the ground. So
yeah, essentially you have like the ship that's kind of sitting thusly.
Yeah, I picture like an angled.
And it's almost like like down, almost like somebody took a paintbrush or a tree and stabbed the ship with it.
Right on. I mean, there's an idea. I don't know if we have.
I like it. I'm for
it.
There's definitely
the sail is still on the broken mast.
There is still enough sailcloth, especially between the 2 different masts, because the other mast fell off of the ship that was taken away as well, and is fallen some distance away from you. And though that one has been torn, between the 2, you'd probably be able to stitch one together.
All right, I say, see what we can do about fixing the ship. If it's possible, we try. Leave in the morning. Sound okay to everybody?
Sounds like the best bet we got.
I don't see why not. I mean, where else are we gonna go?
Yeah, as we kind of all casually look to the vastness of desert around us. Vaught's probably going to avoid going with or going below deck just to keep the people as at ease as possible.
Yeah, they seem decently rattled by the entire experience. These especially being the ones that opted out of fighting. They, much preferred to cower down here as opposed to face these slavers.
I suppose maybe the two slaves that I had helped previously may have put in a good word for me. So
Yeah, they very well may have.
no, man, he's a cool snake. He can chill.
So it sounds like the plan then is to remain here for the evening. And then
Maybe
get to work.
Assess our situation, start the project, if anything.
Okay.
Well, at least start sowing the
hours
sail.
before
Yeah.
nightfall. I figure we use the last couple hours of daylight and to try to see what we can do and start the fixing process, and then rest once the sun sets.
Excellent. Okay. So
Draw up blueprints and start allocating jobs.
So I forgot to mention Vaat's extended shipworking career.
he's a shipwright / blacksmith.
We all have
So-
some experience with building ships from the last time.
Not all of you. Some of you.
I took level in shipmaking and apprenticeship.
Apprenticeship making.
I studied midship.
So, those of you who have a skill that you think could apply in this situation, go ahead and propose that, and then we'll have you make rolls. Because Noctos and Rith have actually done this process once before, the two of you will have advantage on this roll. Likewise, if anybody does happen to have land vehicles or water-based vehicles, they can apply their proficiency to this as well.
For helping with sewing the sail together, could I use my medicine for like stitching?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Instead of applying your wisdom, however, apply your dexterity.
Okay.
I would like. Go ahead.
How about history for having done this before? Knowing how this ship, having been on the ship, I would have a recollection of, its layout and such for better work. I don't know how to describe that. Or
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
survival for, we're going to have to cut this mast, like we're cutting down a tree or something.
Yeah, I think history would probably be more applicable.
History sounds better.
I'd like to make an insight check to use the sands and craft an image out of the sands that will reveal to us how we're supposed to piece together this lightning tree to create the mast.
Excellent. Yeah, so you're going to kind of interpret the signs, if you will.
Yeah.
So I got. I rolled mine ahead of time, but I was going to do athletics, figuring I'm kind of more of the muscle in this situation, whether it be hoisting things from the ground or, putting them into position. I rolled a 9, so.
It's tough work, and unfortunately, you're one of the only ones who's rather strong.
I misliked today.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's kind of hard to do a lot of this stuff, and it's not necessarily that you're failing to do so; it's just difficult.
Yeah.
You're probably going to sleep very, very well tonight.
Right on.
Okay, it looks like Noctos has a 22. Rith has a 21. Shava got a 12. Khalid, was there anything that you wanted to attempt during this time?
I don't actually know that Khalid would have a whole lot to contribute on his own. I will say, do you think he'd be able to perhaps help somebody else, just like with the help action for advantage?
Could
Yeah.
very well help me.
He could probably help Vaat out.
Yeah, he's not super strong, but he's got a 1 modifier, so he's not terrible. So I imagine like he would give Vaat a hand.
I feel like you're like the only person.
Brace some of the heavy lifting, so Vaat can kind of maneuver it because he's a lot stronger. But Khalid can at least kind of help him out.
Excellent. Okay, and Baron, that'll give you advantage on that roll.
All right, we're sitting a lot better for this one. Got 23.
Perfect. I was looking for 3 successes, and that gives us our 3rd success. So it is not pretty, but it is patched together in a fashion that you think it will sail. It may not make it very far. It may not make it back from wherever you're headed, but it'll at least get you further.
We do that in a few hours?
No. That's,
Yeah.
No. That's just the result of the work will be that. But no, you're right. Before we get ahead of ourselves. So that evening, darkness starts to set around the construction project in the desert. And as is typical here in the desert, the moment that the color from the sun's rays is gone from the sky, darkness begins to set in with its old companion, cold. Starts to grow very cold very quickly. So, is there going to be a fire tonight? And is there going to be a watch? If there is a watch, who is taking place in, or who is taking role in it, and what order are you going in?
So if you don't mind,
go ahead.
would there be something that you would allow me to do before we like go into sleeping stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, while they're kind of getting settled in, like they've done their share of the work, and they've kind of started to gather again. Khalid would hold out the 2 pieces of that clay rune on it that was broken in half, and just say, "I'm not much for Dick. What this might be? I found it where, and basically just offering up to see if maybe one of the other casters might know anything about this."
Can Riz do an Arcana check on that?
Yes, anybody who wishes can make an Arcana check. So, Vaat, you do not know what this particular clay disc it was used for, but you have seen and heard of these kinds of discs being used before. They essentially are able to store 1 spell, and snapping them activates the spell. It's a way for non-magical casters to be able to have access. It's essentially kind of like a potion. But you don't recognize the rune that is on the 2 broken pieces. You know, they kind of fit together, but there's a small piece that's missing, so you're not able to see the whole rune. It's just not one that you're familiar with. Rith, on the other hand, you are able to see enough of the sigil on this these clay pieces that you're able to make out what it was. And it was a tablet or disc or whatever you what have you, of shadow jump. I don't know if it's actually a spell in 5th edition or not, but essentially what it does is it allows you to jump between one shadow to another. So much distance apart.
Way of the shadow, markability?
Yes, yes. I believe that's true.
Yeah, and assume that that knowledge would be departed to Khalid, he would immediately go into like a deep brown. Just like it means he's still in the area. As much as we all need rest, we should keep a watch, at least a little bit. I don't want to be stabbed in the night, especially not by him.
I wasn't going to bring this up because we were about to long rest, but since we have potential danger, we should probably do a short rest and get hit die back. So as a suggestion.
Might not be a bad idea. I'm sitting pretty low.
Well, like if a long rest gets interrupted like halfway through, that would still like count as a short rest, right?
Yeah, especially for this situation. I'm fine with that.
And we should certainly try for a long rest, and if it becomes a short rest, oh well.
Okay. So it does sound like there has been a watch declared. And is there going to be a fire?
Yes, there should be enough wreckage around to gather, and then Rith can use Druidcraft to light it up.
Where are you placing this fire?
Is there a brazier or anything in the captain's quarters?
There probably would be. You'll have to kind of prop something up because, again, the ship is somewhat listed, but you can kind of prop it up to make it mostly level. So you built...
Just be careful not to light up our ship.
Yes, you'll probably have to keep it to a moderate, fire. You wouldn't be able to build like a large bonfire or anything. So that probably puts most of you huddled fairly close together. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 10 of you total. In any of the wind callers that you ask, especially the 2 that you healed, would be willing to take a shift in this watch if you need them to or want them to, or you want to double up or whatever. Okay, so what I need from you guys is an order and how long your shifts are going to be, roughly.
Noctis will volunteer to go first.
I don't know necessarily how effective my character is when it's cold.
It's not going to get cold enough for us to really bother with anything like that.
Then yeah, I have no problem taking second watch then.
Shava's real shook up by all of this, so she's going to take the last watch and do her stand drawing as the sun rises.
That means Rith will be the mid-watch, middle of the night.
So Khalid, are you okay with taking the 4th watch, or would you rather one of the wind callers take it?
No, Khalid would definitely be worried about the ink in the area, and he wouldn't trust one of the wind callers to be able to spot that. So he would definitely offer up his abilities.
Okay, so it sounds like it's just going to be the 5 of you on watch, and that puts it probably roughly 2 hours apiece. So about a 10-hour night. It sounds like is kind of what you're looking at. Okay, hang on just one second.
In true Mahan fashion, at least for a portion of the first watch, I want to use my gold sensibility, and all of the gold that's now buried in the sands is just kind of scattered in the area. I'm going to start collecting.
Okay, excellent. Roll me percentile, if you would, please.
25.
Okay, so you are able to find roughly 250 gold pieces worth of various coin scattered about. It takes a while to pick up, but you're able to collect it all.
I believe I can pinpoint anything that's within like a certain range, but that's just how much is there or whatever.
Yes,
or
exactly.
I have time for.
Yeah, that's basically how much fell from the ship that wasn't fused into a solid piece, which keeps keeps becoming the bright point on your radar, if you will. Every time you turn it on. Okay, so Noctis had the first watch. Who was on the second watch? Was that Vaat?
Yeah, I'm on second watch.
Okay. So Noctis, it sounds like, spent his watch kind of out in the general battlefield, or at least a portion of it. Where are you taking your watch at, Vaat?
Is this fire just kind of on the deck of the ship? Kind of propped.
The fire is probably where everybody is sleeping in order to keep everybody warm.
Fair enough.
If everybody's sleeping below decks, then it's below decks. I don't know where everybody...
I would imagine below decks if it's cold. So I'm honestly probably curled up as tight as I possibly can. Just kind of shrugging it out on the deck of the ship, maybe right outside the door.
So yeah, you're kind of at the top of the stairs, but you're on the top deck.
Yep.
So the night is very cold. It's a cloudless night, and the stars are plastered across the heavens above you. You can see the first moon of Rostfin is completely full. It's kind of bluish white hue, kind of bathing the area in its light. And the second moon of Rostfin is not present. It is in its dark phase. And if you would please go ahead and roll me a perception check. If you do not have disadvantage, if you do not have dark vision, you are at disadvantage.
Do I have dark vision? So while I'm kind of bundled up here at the top of the stairs, I'm like fiddling with my amulet. I haven't communed with my ancestors. I do have dark vision. My ancestors in a while, but I haven't earned a conversation with them in my mind. So I kind of, fiddle with it, put it back in whatever kind of pocket I have, kind of, like pat it to make sure that it's there. And I got a 15 perception check.
You are miles away, focused on this trinket that you carry and what it means to you. And as you're kind of recalling perhaps a particular memory of the individual that gave this to you, there's something in that memory that makes kind of a scuffing noise. And it yanks you from your dream, if you will, your waking dream. And out of the corner of your eye, between the boards that form the deck, where you can see the flickering orange light from the fire down below, a shadow moves across the flames, darkening them for a moment before they return.
So I just see a slight shadow move across the deck.
Yeah, no, essentially underneath the deck, in between the boards, you're able to see the firelight, and something
Yeah.
interrupts that firelight, blocks it for a moment beneath the floorboards.
Okay, so someone below deck, rather.
Correct.
I would maybe like retreat to the doorway and kind of like call over my shoulder, like, who's awake down there?
There's a silence that follows. You hear the slight noise of people breathing heavily as they sleep. And you hear a slight creak of wood of the ship. Nothing more.
Vaat, he sits there for a second in the silence, and he justifies it. So he'll just slide far enough down the steps to kind of peek to scan the room for any reasons why there'd be a shadow that passes in front of the fire.
Okay, make me one more perception roll, please.
God, I hit 13 that time.
You see the wounded wind caller, the one that had the wound to his shoulder, roll over, but you think that you might see the glint of metal come from his general direction as he rolls over.
The glint of metal. Do I see where exactly this glint comes from?
About waist region or so, and it's definitely firelight against steel, kind of a reflection of the fire.
I honestly would probably no. I don't know. What would Bot think? Is he like across the room, or is he closer to the stairs, or?
He's actually lying down a little further away from you, but that's not where he fell asleep. It's not where he was whenever you began your watch. He was closer to the stairs before. It looks like he's actually moved for whatever reason and is actually lying down nearer to Khalid.
I'm going to, as carefully as I can, kind of wiggle through the sleeping denizens of the ship and kind of just try and shake his shoulder.
Yeah, it takes just a little, but he rouses and he kind of rolls over and looks at you kind of sleepy-eyed. What? Is something wrong?
Is everything all right?
Oh, the shoulder still hurts, but I think I'm fine, yes.
And I will basically go back the way I came, just without turning around, kind of scanning the room, but keeping my eye on him to make sure he lays back down.
Make an insight roll for me, if you would.
8 on the die for a total of 12.
You are moving back, and a thought, an emotion, kind of passes over his face, kind of beneath the surface.
Would
And
he still be looking at me?
yes, he effectively was kind of looking at you, and then went to close his eyes to go back to sleep. Something about his expression, for just the barest hint of a moment, there's something up with this guy. He is not being 100% truthful or something.
I think as I get that inclination from him, I'm gonna whisper to him, if there's anything you need to tell me, you should feel free, but until then, go to sleep. And I'm gonna try and use suggest person, I think it is, charm person, to try and convince him to relax.
Okay. What do you need from me?
I need a DC 12.
Wisdom?
Yep.
So he kind of looks at you and furrows his brow for a moment and then kind of just smiles and nods and then puts his head down.
And it's almost like the faint like bob of me retreating backwards up the steps was the slight hypnotism, maybe like the reflection off my eyes, just kind of like a Ka from the Jungle Book.
Yeah, they're kind of reflective in the firelight, kind of iridescent with a mirror-like shine, and it seems as though it lulls him right back to sleep.
And I guess with just his current state of consciousness and my use of this ability in the past, I wouldn't know if it had worked 100%. So I'm still rather leery of, him as I go back up to finish my watch. Maybe keeping an eye on the floor to see if any more shadows cast themselves.
But you are returning to the deck above.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Khalid. You are awoken suddenly, abruptly, by an incredibly sharp pain in your chest. What is the first thing that you do upon waking up?
So like the pain jolts him awake. And one hand would go to his chest where he felt the pain. The other would instinctively reach away from his chest to like grab at anything that might be there.
You awaken to find a long blade shoved between your ribs, as you have now taken 13 points of piercing damage.
So actually, Khalid doesn't wake up then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, have him wake up, and then, so if he's going to make a noise, if he's going to call out, lash out, what have you, you get basically an action.
That's no fun. I don't think he would be able to make a noise. Like the blade, like going through his ribs, would probably rob him of his breath. Like, I think he would like reach up to like grab, but like he doesn't have the strength to actually do it. So like his hand like goes up instinctively, the other hand kind of like grabbing at like the blade that is now like in him. But I'm gonna say there's probably not much more of that happens.
Yeah, so maybe he reaches out and hits something and knocks it over.
Maybe. Nope. We'll get to that in a moment. Khalid, as your eyes shoot open and you look up, reaching out, you see this wind caller, this injured man, leaning over you, grinning. And for a moment, his face darkens and changes shape somewhat to that of a black-skinned gnoll. And he says, "This time, it was for pleasure." You know what you've done. And now you've paid the price. I will see you in the afterlife, Khalid.
Yeah, and there's just like a moment of recognition, probably from the moment that he noticed the blade, but especially, of course, afterwards. And Khalid would just give like in his almost like last moments, would just kind of give like almost a nod, as if like he understood what was happening. And like obviously he doesn't agree with it from his own survival point, but like he can't begrudge this man carrying out the code of their order. No deserters, no betrayers. And those are the words that go through his mind as he slips out of consciousness.
Everyone else, if you would please, give me a perception roll at disadvantage. Vaat, you are not at disadvantage. Vaat, you think you hear a kind of almost a wet squish. It's very faint. And then there's definitely some kind of whispering that follows. Could just be somebody talking in their sleep, but I'm not quite sure. Shava, you're apparently at a point in your sleep where you've somewhat roused, but you're rolling over or what have you to go back to sleep. And something just kind of slams into your upper arm. And you kind of look down and you realize that it's Khalid's hand. He's apparently kind of flailed his arm outward, and it has basically just backhanded you in the upper arm. But you're pretty groggy.
Yeah. I like shake myself awake, and my dagger is already in my hand. I was sleeping with it because I was so on edge in the night. And I raise my dagger up, and then I trace the arm, and I realize what's happening. And he's obviously injured, right?
There is currently a sword sticking out of his chest.
Yeah, okay. Then she's just going to scream. Nobody has ever heard her speak above like a fairly low voice, and she just starts screaming, help, 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 over and over again.
And I'm sure I had at least made it halfway there by now.
He is hurt. He is hurt. We need to find help for him.
So, Khalid, if you would please give me 2 death saving throws in the course of these actions.
A 4 and a natural 1.
So, Vaat comes slithering, crashing down the stairs as the rest of the people gathered here in this cabin are gathered close together. And by the time that Vaat makes it over to where Shava is moving to stand over Khalid, who is it that realizes first that Khalid is no longer to be counted amongst the living?
I want to say Rith, as he hears his spirit cry out. Among the noise around him, Rith hears very clearly Khalid as he leaves his body behind and goes off into the spirit realm.
Yeah, Rith, you might even actually somewhat see his spirit kind of rise up and through the deck of the ship. Maybe this explains your recent connection, your new abilities that you are now tapping into.
I didn't even try to follow that up. Like, I guess it is at this moment that Rith suddenly realizes, you know, he's got a stronger connection to this other realm that he didn't quite have when he first started here, but as time progressed, he started to hear more and more, and now he's witnessing Khalid literally rising up and away. He's seeing beyond this world more so than ever before, and it dawns on him that something's up in more ways than one. First of all, you know, he says out loud, Khalid's dead. Just almost without emotion, as his emotional side is overtaken by his intellectual side. Just Khalid's dead. And then he stops, and the emotional side comes back, and he puts his head in his hands, ignoring the immediate danger, and says to himself, I have had more adventures, just him and I, than anybody else here. And I feel like I got to know him. But how could an assassin die in his sleep? Of all the ways.
So Rith has said all this from across the room. Some of you probably not sure exactly how he's able to tell that he's dead from that many feet away. So as Vaat and Shava and eventually even Noctos make their way to the corpse of Khalid, how do you all respond?
Could I maybe make a investigation or maybe insight to kind of try and check the guy with the shoulder wound for the steel that I seen him with at the base of the stairs?
You don't have to roll. They wear rags, essentially. They don't really have a whole lot. And it doesn't take long to search him. You may have to be a little forceful, but he's not really fighting. It's just, having been woken up. He has no sort of weapon on him whatsoever. No steel, as a matter of fact.
I'll probably maybe pull Shava. She was closest to me, so I'll probably pull her to the side and maybe, he was carrying a weapon earlier. I assumed it was to defend himself against the pirates, but it appears as if I was mistaken.
The slave did this?
I cannot tell you for certain, but if I had to take a roll of the dice.
I'm still holding my dagger, and so I'm going to walk over and point it at the slave. Did you kill this man?
He recoils from your blade. No. How? Why would I have done such a thing?
He says you had a sword.
I did somewhere. And he kind of starts patting himself down and looking around where he was sleeping. I don't see it.
Shava's going to stand up. Did anyone see this happen? Anyone at all?
No one answers. You can have an insight roll, though, Eli.
That is a 20 on the or 20 modified.
So nobody responds when you call out, and you're kind of looking around this gathered group of faces, and just, again, for just a briefest hint of a moment, you see a slight smile turn at the corner of the mouth of the man with the wound in his shoulder.
The man I was just talking to.
Correct.
Looking at my spells here. I think so I look over at this guy and I start to back away. He has lost his mind. The sands, they have driven him insane. Look at him.
I think at this time, Vaat's probably put his hand on his sword hilt, at the very least.
So Shava has her dagger in her hand. She's definitely going to, like, as she's backing away from this guy, she's pointing it out at him defensively, and it is serving as casting of the cantrip True Strike.
Again, he's kind of almost crab walking backwards away from you guys, you know, kind of almost up the side of the curvature of the hall now. What are you doing? No. What are you doing?
You will answer. Tell us, why have you done this to this man?
I did nothing. And he kind of walks over to Khalid. I didn't even know this man. I could never wield such a thing as this. And he reaches out and puts his hand on the hilt of the sword.
You are a liar. I'm going to dive at him and stab him.
Okay.
So
I would like a reflex or a dexterity saving throw, if you would, please.
From me? Gotcha.
Yes, sir. Real quick.
Okay. Dexterity, I got a 20 modified.
So he tries to respond before you're able to stab him, but you're faster. So go ahead and make your attack.
Okay, so let's see here. That is going to be... You know what? I'm going to spend an inspiration on this. I got no better than... Oh, God, what is it? 13 to hit.
That barely manages to connect.
Okay. And then damage for this guy is 9 damage.
Okay. Yeah, he takes all of that. And he kind of staggers backwards just a bit. But he does pull the short sword from Kaliba's body in the process.
Has his expression
not
changed
Kaliba,
at all?
Khalid, sorry. He is recoiling from the pain, but it is kind of turning into somewhat of a grimace.
Okay. I'm going to attack him again whenever I get the chance.
Do you have more than one attack around at this moment?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think Vaat might have followed up behind her.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to give everybody else a chance to respond if they'd like.
Which I rolled an 18 on the die for my attack for 5 damage.
Okay. Yes. He takes that as well, kind of staggering him back even further. And you notice the places where you've cut him, the skin around the cuts is black, almost the color of obsidian, though the red that pours from the wound is certainly red. The blood that pours from the wound is certainly red. And He brandishes this short sword before him, and he says, I suppose there's no reason to pretend any longer. And his form shifts before your very eyes into that of a black-skinned gnoll, the ink of Messhiba. His sword looking much more recognizable to some of you, as he then speaks a single word, sunlight, and his blade erupts in flames. He's going to step forward and is going to attack Shava once and Vaat once. What are your armor classes, if you would, please?
Minus 15.
Okay.
Are you sleeping in that armor?
I was on watch, so I'm probably wearing my armor still. Well, I got a 16 armor class.
Okay. He makes contact with Shava. However, he misses Vaat. Shava, you are going to take... Okay. Total between slashing and fire, you take 21 points of damage.
I'm down. Takes me down to -2 hit points.
Okay, so you fall to 0 and then collapse under the slash of his magic short sword. All right. The three of you. How are you responding? What are you doing? It looks like Trevor
I have a question regarding our short rest.
Mm-hmm.
Did that actually take place?
Yes. So if you wished, you could have spent hit dice on the short rest.
Yeah, because I definitely would have wanted to do that.
And while he's rolling that up, Rith, why don't you take your turn?
I do need to know, do class changes apply during a short rest, or does it have to be full long rest?
No, I'm fine with it in this situation because we've already role played through the event that kind of has allowed you access.
I'll kind of say like Ritz's powers are they're just showing up without, he's like, I don't know where this came from, but cool. So as Shava goes down, Rith leaps up off the floor from across the room and just shouts, "No, no more!" and stretches out his fingers to launch out an Eldritch Blast at Kimemwe, or sorry, the Inca Messhiba. Rith's hearing these names in his head, and he's not sure if it's right or not. The Inca Messhiba. And that is that's an 18 to hit?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and he's directing both beams towards him. So what is the where's my D10? Which one's the D10? That one. And that one. Ooh, wow. Okay, that would be 18 points of damage. Force damage.
Okay. And having already been injured before, how does this take him down to essentially half a hit point? In other words, he's dying, but you have a role-playing scene if you would like it.
As he's dying.
Correct.
In that moment that the blast hits him, it's gonna knock Kamenwe off his feet and backwards into the back wall of the ship, where he will slam it, boom, with a lot of force and slide down to the floor, unable to get up and respond, and risk too stunned to do anything beyond that. As he's looking at this newfound power, like where did this come from?
Aptos, you have yet to do anything.
He's gonna finally stir and wake up, and try to assess what's going on, and just seeing the bloodbath that's kind of before him. He's gonna then look out and effectively try to do a medicine check to see kind of where everybody's at, if that's okay.
Everything?
21.
I would say you have a pretty rapid, accurate assessment of the status on the battlefield.
Then with my last, so yeah, he's going to roll off of his cot or bedding, grab one of his water skins and kind of crawl over to Shava, and with his last first level spell, do cure wounds for 7 points. Popular number.
And as Shava is brought back from the brink of crossing over into the next world, what does that look like?
So Noctis kind of forces his water skin to her lips, which, not being conscious, kind of chokes her for a moment. And while she's on the verge of drowning, kind of catches her breath and spits some of it back out. But the spray of water then kind of falls on her face and revitalizes her, as she then takes a full deep breath of Yabala's water, which does go into her lungs, but then radiates throughout her body in a very soothing way.
I really did choke just then too. And from Shava's perspective, I imagine whenever she got hit, it was this searing pain, this heat, and this flash of light. And for a moment, she wasn't a person anymore. She was just a perspective over a sand dune in the midst of this baking desert heat. And it was high noon, and she couldn't see anything, but she could see and she could hear and she could feel this endless desert around her. And then all of a sudden, she was back to herself again, and she was choking and sputtering, but she was like alone at the same time.
Khalid, you awaken in a bizarre, strange place. The sky is the color of purple and pink wildflowers. But there are no stars, at least whenever you're looking up. But as you look down, you realize that the black sands beneath your feet actually appear as the night sky, stars buried somewhere deep beneath the surface. As you were walking across this sky, sand, and ahead of you, you see a bright light, and someone seems to be standing on top of a dais with a large set of scales. And as you approach, you notice the scales look a little out of balance. And this figure, this female who appears to have the head of a cat and the body of a female human, looks somewhat bemused as you approach, and her eyes kind of shift to these unbalanced scales. And she begins shaking her head. That is a shame. It is a shame. And as you finally close, you realize that this figure is easily some 30 to 40 feet tall. These scales proportioned to her. And it's kind of an odd sensation, but you realize that what's on the scale are the deeds of your life. On the one side, the good things you have done, and sadly, on the other, the evils and the atrocities that you have committed, far outweighing the good. And just before she says anything else, you hear the sound of rushing water. And from the side, a cascade of water kind of washes across this dais as you see a familiar face come into existence and step forward. It is Yabala. And she says, Evandel, wait. And the being with the scales turns ever slightly towards her, and she says, Yabala, this is not your realm. This is my place. This is Amaween. You do not belong here. Yabala turns to you, Khalid, as she strides forward. And she says, Khalid, you swore an oath to me. You made me a promise that is not yet fulfilled. But I give you a choice. I will hold you to that promise. And therefore I will grant you the gift of life. However, if you so choose, you may remain wherever it is that Evandel has decided to send you. What will it be?
Khalid is hearing these words. He's processing them as best as he's able, which is not well, given how much this is kind of a new experience for him. His eyes are just fixed on those scales. The scales, one side way up, the good, the other side far down. As he looks at the scales, you can almost feel he ended as an assassin, like the screams and the blood of each person that he ended scale further and further down. And he turns his head over towards Yabala. There have been... The words kind of seem to get like stuck in his throat. So much blood on my hands. So many black deeds done. The stain that is not even by you.
No, Jeff. Your audio.
Yeah, it's like every time he starts monologuing, it drops him.
Right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I don't know how much of that you heard.
We got to the stain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the stain that is my existence, my past. The stain that can't be washed out.
You underestimate the power of water, Khalid. Water cleanses all things, given enough time. Choice is yours. I will not force your decision.
Khalid's like visibly shaking, like his chest like moving up and down with every breath.
I can promise that you will have more time. I cannot promise how much more. But perhaps with time, you can cleanse the stain. You can balance these scales before judgment is due.
Judgment is already due. Be change, but by in my life drove me towards my hatred of the culture. Thing did. To go back would be myself. It wouldn't be that would be back. I don't know who it would be, but it would be somebody else. And I don't want to be somebody else. My deeds are done. Let them be done. The judgment is cast. Let it be cast.
With your decision seemingly having been made, Yabala nods solemnly. Then I release you of your vow to me, of your bond, both to me and to your life. You have done well as my champion, Khalid, though it be for a short time. I sincerely hope that wherever it is that Evandel has decided is your final resting place, that it is one that brings you solace and peace. Goodbye. And she fades away backwards, dissipating into mist. Evandel, standing nearby, looks down at you once more. A purring emitting from her, and she says, "Oh, you have made your choice. Step forward, Khalid. Receive my judgment."
Khalid's shaking. He's nervous for like the first time that he can remember. It's been so long since he's felt this feeling, that feeling of anxiety, that feeling of being not up to the task. but with a shaking step, it falls downwards. There's the scale hanging. So he takes a step.
She looks aside to the scales once more. There must be balance. There must be justice. In the world of mortals, the same as it is in every realm. You have been judged. And the scene fades to black. Back aboard the ship. What are the four of you doing as you are mourning the loss of Khalid?
Nocto starts kind of adjusting his body and getting him in preparations for like his people's death rites, their ritual. We'll kind of clean the wound and wash water over it, and then kind of just be stoic for a bit and let everybody pay their respects.
I think I would have at least a minimal knowledge of maybe some of these processes to at least give you a hand. Maybe participate and just pay attention, if anything.
Smith is going to sink back down to the floor in disbelief as the reality of what has happened hits him. Having his newfound connection to the spirit world, he witnessed parts of Khalid's judgment, but he does not share it with everybody else, for it's too graphic for everybody.
Could I take this as far as the next day or whenever we're actually having buried him and are like by the grave or whatever?
Yeah, so long as there's not anything else that somebody wants to do before that point.
Cool.
In my priest pack, would there be the proper devices to drain his body?
With the death masks that you have, yes. They are worn by the priests and priestesses of Nerul in order to enact the ritual of water, which is exactly what you're talking about, for menaces.
Then I would like to do that before we bury him or burn him or whatever.
Okay, so does that make sense to happen before whatever it is that you're trying to do, Eli, with Shava?
Totally, yeah. I want to do something well after he's gone.
Okay, well after. Okay. So, yeah, if you would, Mike, kind of walk us through what this ritual of water looks like for Khalid. Anybody can feel free to add into it if they wish.
So with before he gets started, he's gonna cast purify food and drink over his water skins to clean out any of the war, or not the war, but the filth that would have ended up back in some of his water skins from the magics that he had been casting during that combat. And he's going to kind of lay them around Khalid. And he's going to take one last water skin or vessel out of his priest pack, specifically for Khalid's water to be retained in. It's a much more ornate container. And then he'll put on his mask, and it'll kind of form into his beard slightly. And we'll start chanting in Dwarven to Yavala. and the water will start moving about and make connections into each appendage of Khalid as his essence starts shrinking, like as his actual form gets a little bit smaller as the water starts to collect. And then if anyone else is wearing a mask, they can take the next step.
So Shava never received one of those masks. I think this whole time she's just kind of standing by, numbly observing everything that's going on.
Okay. Then as this pool of water starts collecting, it has a lot of filth and blood and dirt in it, and it starts to filter out, potentially even seeing some images of deeds that Khalid had done in his past, and then it even potentially takes on the form of a scale, showing the imbalance. But then all of that, the badness that was within him, kind of fades away, just leaving this very crisp and clean, pure water that then is filtered into that container. And then the Noctis will take it over and present it to everyone to take a sip. After he does so.
So when Vaat is presented this wineskin, how does he reply?
He looks solemnly at the water skin, and aloud he says, "May your swordsmanship live on through me." And he'll take a sip, and put it back down and look at it, and like under his breath, "I apologize. I failed you," as he hands it to the next person.
Who is the next person?
It's probably a low handoff down to Rith.
Rith takes
Rith, how do you reply?
Rith takes this wineskin this giant wineskin in both hands and takes a gulp of Khalid's remains, for lack of a better term, and clicks his tongue with the flavor to savor it, and says, "I may not know too much about you, but you will be missed. I just hope they were kind to you in the afterlife." And then he passes it along to, let's see, Shava.
I think Shava's
Yeah, it's
the
just
only one
that's what Shava is.
Yeah, Shava's the only piece to left.
Who's left?
So Shava, again, she's not really paying attention, but she takes this wineskin and she looks at it for a little while. And she looks up at this area where he's been prepared and done away with, and she very solemnly takes a drink out of this wineskin. She brings it down and she holds it for a little while, and there's a change that comes over her eyes. And immediately she hands the wineskin back to Vaat. And then she goes over to where all this preparation took place, like out on this sand. And she touches the pendant on her chest, and sand kind of explodes around her, and it starts swirling. all around her, like 10 feet to either side. And she's swirling and she's walking amongst this gigantic thing of sand. And she's like moving certain places around and that sort of thing. And eventually she gets, oh yeah. He's a husk, right? I think it's about the same. She's walking around his corpse, and she's spinning this sand and everything, and it even obscures the sight of him from everyone else for a little while. But then eventually she backs away, and she's like holding her arms out, guiding this sand as it comes to settle down. And when it settles, it's this gigantic mandala type shape, and it's like hieroglyphs, but it's concentric circles of hieroglyphs going in toward the center. And it starts out at the end. The border is this jagged kind of red geometric shape. It vaguely looks like the rooftop of tents. And there's a solid black line just inside there. And then a little further, there's this angry blue line. And then inside that, there are these really jagged white lines that break everything up. And then there is a wider band than others, and it's just a bunch of rolling oranges and yellows and stuff like that. It's evocative of sand. And then there's another few bands until you get to the middle, where it's all really angry and aggressive, and it looks like there's lightning exploding out from the middle. And the middle is the actual husk of Khalid. And she says, "What a strange couple of days this has been. I was living a normal life and thought I would live and die with my caravan, and now I find myself attending the funeral of a man I hardly knew. He was brave and skillful, and he deserved more than what he got. And I see the sands that led to his death, but I cannot make out a message of the future. I wish my master were here, but his was the first death I have suffered in these 2 days. But looking at these sands and seeing the skills he has taught me, I see it culminates in this corpse before us. And I know that he was connected to many of you. And I want to see what becomes of these swirling sands that stand before us."
Do you also perform the rite of water on Kamimwe? You would know that it's not necessarily specifically an honor, that it is also often done against prisoners of war and the like.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should definitely take his water, but I'm not trying to be too fancy about what we do with the husk.
Yeah, you guys definitely don't have a whole lot of water remaining on board.
We could use the husk as the rotor for the ship.
Yeah, I'll go through the process for him as well. I won't be nearly as ceremonial.
Sure. Yeah, it's much more abrupt, much more taciturn. And the morning eventually comes, and the sun once again finds you. And from wherever it was that the husk of Kamimwe was discarded or what have you, and across the mandala that Shava has made, you see 2 sets of footprints leading away to the north. And the husks are not present. And that's where we're going to be ending the session tonight. Thank you, everybody who tuned in to give us a watch this evening, or who may be watching at some point in the future. I very, very much appreciate your patronage, if you will, as well as the fine performance that was put forth by the 5 individuals who played in the game tonight, who I will now pass the outros to so that they can say what they got to say before we wrap this up. So we'll go with Jeff first.
Yeah, I mean, what a way to go. It was a lot of fun, a great session. And like all the better / worse of that, like I basically knew the entire time like what was happening. Like the second you're like, there's a dude off to the side with a shoulder wound, I was like, God damn it. But there's like no way that I could justify like doing in character, so I just like head with the sinking feeling in my stomach. To die, but the dice have thus decreed it to be so, and I accept their decision. Yeah, some conversations about what that will going in the meantime. But yeah, YouTube channel called Encounter, a podcast that I do with Jeremy, soon to be Chad Nick, called Dudes of Yore.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very, very much for not only being okay with having your character killed, which unfortunately a lot of players are not, and but not only for being okay with it, but also accepting it and making it a fantastic moment. Truthfully, it led to a lot of really amazing role playing tonight, and I'm very, very thankful that it played out the way that it did. And yes, we will absolutely have some conversations about what comes next for Jeff the player. And then we may have to see what happens with Khalid the character later on. So, yes, absolutely check out. I have links below for Jeff's channel, as well as a few of these others, who will mention their channels in just a moment, as well as the Dudes of Yore, which can be checked out on SoundCloud or YouTube. And yeah, we'll move right along now. We'll go with Baron next.
So everybody, I'm Baron. I'm over at RWD Gaming. We do videos like this. We talk about stuff. Shoot me ideas if you got them. As always, it's a privilege to be here. Really, really excellent game tonight. I'm going to be talking about it tomorrow all day at the price of my coworkers' time. So thank you for having me. It's been a blast, but I am going to have to take off. It is getting a bit late here, so...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Have a good one, guys. I will talk to you in the future.
Thank you very much, Baron. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You guys as well, for sure.
All right. We will go next to Trevor.
Wow. I don't know where to start. That was all sorts of cool stuff going on here. We got dragons flying in and stealing ships, and you got explosions and lightning, and then one of our players dying, and... Well, not the player himself, but his character. You know, if Jeff died on the air, we'd have an even bigger problem. But still, that was... I think I'm going to walk away from this with PTSD now. Some heavy stuff. But the role play was definitely great for everybody. If I could give out points of inspiration, I would. But I don't have that power. Only the DM does. And he used it wisely. Hopefully Jeff will join us in the future. He's going to need a new cover sheet, though. We'll probably have to fill out a new application. But till then, see y'all in a month or two, depending on how holidays line up for everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. I forget, that's in 2 days.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal that it's coming up that fast. But
just poof. Oh, Thanksgiving. Wow.
So, yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure, Trevor. Again, like this is shaping up to be such a fun story, and you guys add so much to it and bring so much with the characters that you guys have chosen to play. It's always a lot of fun to kind of see what you guys are going to do with what I hand you. So
certainly went over the top. And Jeff, thanks for giving.
All right, Mike.
I have to bring it up because it was a big event. Jeff, fantastic character death. It's definitely in my top 10 listing now. Jeremy, thank you for running the game. I always enjoy playing underneath your wing. I will catch you guys next time. It's fantastic.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure to have you. I know that sometimes I might chintz on how much I compliment and thank you for playing, but that's just because I play with you all the time. So it's kind of a normal thing. But you always do a great job, and especially tonight, you did a really good job, especially taking the ball with the Rite of Water and kind of winging that on the spot and everything. I think you did a great job, and Noctos is a lot of fun to watch. Be both a warrior and a priest. No, man, no, it was right on. You did a great job. All right, and last but certainly not least, Eli.
Yeah. So, man, what a session. That was really good stuff. I remember like getting finished with the dragon encounter and thinking to myself, how are we going to top this? Because this dragon was friggin' terrifying. And then turns out, I mean, Khalid deserved better than he got, but man, way to raise the bar in that second half. Good job. So thanks for letting me play. I'm Eli Kurtz. I'm the head honcho of the Mythic Gazetteer. And come buy our stuff. We're on DriveThruRPG. I'm on Twitter and Google Plus and all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah, so come find me, and I'll be here next time.
Excellent. Always a pleasure, Eli. I've been playing games with you for a while now, and it's always an absolute delight, positively. Guys, thank you so much for playing in this game. Thank you for the people who have tuned in, either tonight live or who will tune in the future and watch this. This has been the Erasmus Expeditions. This has been session 12 of On the Rise. And until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.